Chapter 52. Not long after, old Mistress Zhuang invited everyone to the garden to admire the flowers. In May, the garden was a scene of hundreds of flowers blooming. Near and far, it was a splendid scene. The fragrance was intoxicating with the wind, and the bees and butterflies were flying around. The Zhuang family had many famous flowers, beautiful and enchanting. Lingering among them was pleasing to the eye. Everyone chatted and laughed, and the mood was very good. After the tour was over, old Mistress Zhuang smiled and invited everyone to sit down again. There were already maids who had set up chairs and high tables under the tall purple locust tree. Tea, fruits, and snacks were all exquisite. At the side, there were various flowers cultivated in blue and white porcelain pots. Sitting down to rest, they enjoyed the scenery and tea while chatting and laughing. It was the most comfortable. Of course, it was also good to let the young ladies compete in poetry, painting, music, and calligraphy. From the beginning, Madame Zhuang had brought Tang Yuzhen with her. Whenever she met someone, she would introduce and praise her with a smile. Everyone knew that Madame Zhuang had taken a fancy to this Miss Tang and wanted to marry her as her daughter-in-law. Then, they glanced at the Shi family's daughter-in-law. After sitting down, they looked at each other and smiled knowingly. After a few words, they heard old Mistress Zhuang say with a smile, "How can there be no good poems? Forget about us old ladies. Which one of the young ladies isn't full of poetry and is knowledgeable? We have to make a few good poems to liven things up. It will add some color to this garden of famous flowers. Young ladies, you must not refuse." What do the sisters think? All the ladies agreed. Which mother would want to bring out their daughter or daughter-in-law to compete to win over others? They thought that their own daughter was raised according to the standards of a young lady from a noble family. How could they admit defeat at the beginning of the competition? Old Mistress Zhuang smiled and said, "I have another suggestion. There are many famous flowers in the garden. If we ask the young ladies to make all of them, it will be boring. Why don't we pick 10 types of flowers and make them into flower sticks? Of course, Wan Yang is a talented girl from a scholarly family. She must make one for each type. Wan Yang, what do you think?" As she spoke, she laughed. "I'm not deliberately making things difficult for you. I just want to take this opportunity to let everyone broaden their horizons. I want them to know the difference between a scholarly family and us, the daughters of ordinary families." Wang remained calm and turned to look at Sang-won. Sang-won's heart felt relieved. Just composing a poem was not a problem for her. Moreover, although the madams present were not illiterate, their knowledge was limited. As long as they could make it, it was fine. As for whether it was good or not, they did not care too much. Moreover, since Madame Zhuang had said it, if she refused, Wang would definitely be unhappy even if she wasn't angry. Sang-won nodded slightly at Wang, indicating that she could rest assured. Wang straightened her back and said with a smile, "Since Sister Zhuang has said so, then it's settled. Don't laugh at Wan Yang if she doesn't do well." With a smile that was not a smile, she said, "It's not right for just Wan Yang to do so much. Why don't we invite Miss Tang to accompany us?" Tang Yuzhen stood up and bowed slightly to everyone. She smiled reservedly. "Since that's the case, Yuzhen will accept." Unexpectedly, she agreed readily. Good. Miss Tang is really a straightforward person." Madame Zhuang was looking forward to it. She smiled and clapped her hands. Everyone saw that there was a good show to watch. At the same time, they were curious about who would win and who would lose. They all smiled and agreed. Thus, Madame Zhuang said something to the head maidservant beside her. The maidservant accepted the order and left. Immediately, a servant woman carried several long tables with writing brushes, ink, paper, and inkstone on them. Another person brought out a blue and white porcelain brush holder with 12 flower buds inside. Madame Zhuang ordered someone to bring a tray over. On the tray was a half-foot square box. Madame Zhuang opened the box and showed the item inside to everyone. She smiled and said, "This is perfume from the West. It's not an exaggeration to say that it's worth more than gold. Let's use it as today's prize. Whoever does well, this bottle of perfume will be given to them. The bottle was about 3 inches long and made of Western glass. It had a golden spiral pagoda lid with golden threads hanging from the top. At the end of the lid, there was a red coral stone the size of a cherry. Under the sun, it was exceptionally bright and beautiful. Everyone praised it and laughed, praising Madame Zhuang for her generosity. Not to mention the Western perfume that was difficult to buy even if one had the money, such a beautifully made glass bottle was extremely rare. The coral stone on the top could be used to inlay a ring. It would be worth at least 1,000 taels of silver. This is nothing. Madame Zhuang smiled and said, "Such a fine and good thing should be used by the young ladies. We are old ladies. It would be a waste to keep it in our hands." Everyone laughed and said that only Madame Zhuang, who had a large family and business, could say such things. Wang's heart unconsciously tightened. Madame Zhuang was even willing to use such a rare Western perfume as a prize. It was clear that she was determined to win. She hoped that Wan Yang would be able to live up to her expectations. The young ladies laughed and went forward to take the flower sticks. One by one, they began to ponder in front of the long table. From time to time, they would whisper and joke with the people next to them. Only Sang Wan and Tang Yuzhen did not draw the sticks. The madams were puzzled when they heard Madame Zhuang laugh and say, "It is said that there are 12 divisions, 12 friends, and 12 servants." Just now, the flower sticks that the young ladies drew were the 12 divisions. "Wan Yang, Miss Tang, you two will use the 12 divisions as your prize." "Yes, madam." Tang Yuzhen and Sang Wan looked at each other and nodded with a smile. The madams whispered to each other. Most of them had never heard of the 12 divisions and 12 friends. They felt that it was very novel and interesting. They all laughed and asked about it. Some of them couldn't help but look at Sang Wan and think, if Wan Yang didn't even know what the 12 divisions were, then it would be a joke. Tang Yuzhen was a guest of the Zhuang family, so it was obvious that she was suspected of cheating. Wang secretly cursed. She didn't expect Madame Zhuang to be so crafty. She quickly looked at Sang Wan and saw that Sang Wan's expression was still indifferent. Only then did she feel slightly relieved. Tang Yuzhen also knew that everyone would say that she cheated, so she secretly looked at Sang Wan. If Sang Wan didn't start, she would definitely not start. Otherwise, everyone would say that she prepared in advance. The so-called 12 divisions of flowers referred to peonies, orchids, plum blossoms, chrysanthemums, osmanthus, lotus, peonies, begonias, narcissus, wintersweet, azalea, and magnolia. These 12 types of flowers were either antique or national beauties. When they bloomed, their aura was strong and profound. Although they were ornamental and praised, people didn't dare to touch them. Every time they felt a sense of respect, they couldn't help but treat them as their teachers. Therefore, they were called the 12 divisions. This 12-grade flower was a common occurrence in poetry circles. Since ancient times, scholars had been used to talking about it. Tang Yuzhen thought that it would not be difficult for her. If she wanted to win, she would have to make a fuss about the word fast, as well as her good handwriting. Sang Wan made up her mind. She unfolded the Shuelang rice paper and pressed it down with a white jade paperweight. She picked up the writing brush, dipped it in thick ink, and raised her sleeve to write. Tang Yuzhen saw this and smiled. She elegantly picked up the brush and began to write. Both of them wrote very quickly. It was obvious that they had the same idea. At this time, several young ladies had already finished and returned to their seats. They smiled and watched the two compete. Both of them stopped writing almost at the same time. Madame Zhuang saw this and smiled. "Both of you are really quick-witted. I don't know who is better." She ordered the servant to collect the poems. Everyone looked at them together. Madame Zhuang looked at Sang Wan and smiled. "I always hear your mother-in-law praise you as an outstanding person. Today's test was really surprising." In other words, she was not surprised at all that Tang Yuzhen was confident in her ability to wield the brush so freely and leisurely. "Madame Zhuang is overpraising me." Sang Wan smiled. Wang didn't want to hear this and coldly said, "My Wan Yang has always been very good and low-key. It's not surprising that Madame Zhuang doesn't know." Madame Zhuang smiled and didn't say anything. She looked at the poems with everyone else. Together with 7 or 8 young ladies, there was a total of dozens of poems. The ladies were just watching for fun, praising each poem. It was hard to tell who was better at the moment. There were those who were calm and moderate who praised both sides. There were those who were on good terms with Madame Zhuang or those who were jealous of the Shi family who praised Tang Yuzhen. There were also those who liked Sang Wan's temperament and wanted to curry favor with the Shi family who praised Sang Wan. For a moment, there was no clear winner. But even if everyone had different thoughts and goals, they all looked at Sang Wan in a new light and no longer looked down on her. Initially, they felt that the Sang family had taken advantage of the marriage with the Shi family. But now, they felt that the Sang family's young ladies were indeed outstanding. Those ladies who were waiting to be married off and had secretly chosen Shi Fengju as their son-in-law were also convinced. Madame Li is knowledgeable and fair. Why don't we listen to what Madame Li has to say? One of the ladies said with a smile. Madame Li was the wife of Qingzhou's Li Zhizhou. Her judgment was the fairest. Everyone smiled and looked at her. The Shi family and the Zhuang family were both big families and had a close relationship with Li Zhizhou. Madame Li was put in a difficult position and smiled. How should I say this? I think both of them did equally well. Coincidentally, both of their chrysanthemum poems are outstanding. Young Mistress Shi's Lotus poem and young Mistress Tang's Plum Blossom poem are relatively inferior. However, young Mistress Shi's hairpin-style small regular script is graceful and elegant. She must have practiced a lot of kung fu, right? When the crowd heard that, they compared the two's handwriting. Sure enough, Sang Wan's handwriting was as smooth as flowing water, neat and delicate. The size of the words on each poem was the same, giving a good visual impression to the audience. On the other hand, Tang Yuzhen was not so particular. Her strokes were light and heavy. In some places, the ink had not dried yet, and when she passed it, the ink flowed and formed a conspicuous black spot. It was very eye-catching. The ladies could not help but laugh. Madame Li's eyes are really sharp. Young Mistress Shi's handwriting is indeed excellent. Sang Wan hurriedly tried to be modest, but her heart was slightly bitter. That stroke of calligraphy was actually something she learned when she lived alone in a remote courtyard in her previous life. Looking at the past, it was especially melancholy. It also secretly aroused her fighting spirit. In this life, she wanted to change everything. She wanted everything to be different. Chapter 53. Wang Shi was naturally happy. She smiled proudly and glanced at old Mistress Zhuang. Old Mistress Zhuang was very dissatisfied, but there was nothing she could do. Just as she was about to speak, she heard old Mistress Li laugh again and said, "But today I am talking about the matter as it is, but I have digressed. In my opinion, it is better to send their 2 best and most unsatisfactory poems to the teachers in the manor for comments. In any household, there would always be 2 or 3 teachers who were well-read. With old Mistress Li's suggestion, the ball was kicked out and no one would be offended. Wang was already very satisfied. At least the Shi family would not be gossiped about having such a daughter-in-law. She might as well be generous and said with a smile, "Why so troublesome? It's not easy for Miss Tang to come from afar. I think the perfume should be given to Miss Tang." A bottle of Western perfume was considered a rare item by others, but to the Shi family, it was not difficult to get a bottle. Wang did not take it to heart. Wang was being magnanimous and kind, but she did not know that her words made old Mistress Zhuang and Miss Tang feel greatly insulted. It was as if they were fighting over a bottle of perfume. Miss Tang suffered the loss of being a guest from afar. Although she was angry and ashamed, it was inconvenient for her to say anything. Old Mistress Zhuang sneered and said, "Ai, that won't do. How can we change what we have agreed on? The perfume is a small matter. What we want is a proper name." As she said that, she immediately ordered someone to send out the 4 poems that she had picked out. Really, my good intentions are taken for granted. Wang was also angry and said in a bad mood. Everyone saw the smell of gunpowder between the two and quickly smiled to smooth things over. Old Mistress Zhuang's sister-in-law, old Mistress Jiang, was also a little annoyed. She smiled lightly and said, "In my opinion, young Master Shi is not taking the imperial examinations. It doesn't matter if the old mistress of the household knows these poems or not. The Shi family's business is so big, I'm sure they need a good wife, right? Oh, I forgot. I heard that old Mistress Shi's niece, Miss Gu, grew up in the Shi family. She is good at managing the household and even doing business. No wonder the Shi family's young mistress can spend her time leisurely reading books. It's because there's someone to share her worries." After Madame Jiang finished speaking, there was complete silence. Gu Fengzi and Shi Fengju were childhood sweethearts. Everyone in Qingzhou knew about this. Madame Jiang was clearly trying to sow discord between them. Her words not only ridiculed Sang Wan for her ignorance, but also ridiculed Madame Wang for her hypocrisy. She obviously valued her niece Gu Fengzi more, but she actually used Sang Wan to show off. This was Wang's sole point. Hearing this, she was shocked and angry, but she didn't try to hide it. Instead, she subconsciously looked at Sang Wan to see how she would react. Sang Wan was both embarrassed and angry. It was impossible to say that she didn't resent her mother-in-law. The two families had a marriage agreement, but she allowed and even supported the relationship between Shi Fengju and Gu Fengzi. But what was done could not be undone. Sang Wan couldn't change the fact, and she couldn't show it. Seeing that Wang was looking at her, Sang Wan felt even more embarrassed and wanted to complain. "Mother-in-law is kind and benevolent. What's wrong with taking cousin in since young? Cousin is grateful for her kindness and wants to repay it. Isn't that human nature? As for Wan Yang, what does that have to do with cousin?" Madame Jiang's words are really puzzling. Sang Wan's tone was still gentle, but there was a coldness between her brows. Her bright eyes stared at Madame Jiang without blinking. She didn't show any anger, and the aura of a wife was awe-inspiring. Madame Jiang was pressured by her aura and actually felt a little guilty. She forced a cold smile and said, "You don't understand, but that doesn't mean your mother-in-law doesn't." Wang angrily said, "I don't understand either. Wan Yang is our Shi family's eldest daughter-in-law, and the future mistress of the household. This was something that would never change. What is the meaning of Madame Jiang's words?" Sang Wan smiled and said, "Mother, I think Madame Jiang has good intentions. She is worried that your daughter-in-law isn't virtuous enough to be husband's virtuous wife. She is worried about our Shi family. Madame Jiang, don't worry. Wan Yang won't let you worry. My position as the richest in the Shi family is still far away. Wan Yang doesn't dare to show off, but she knows a thing or two about managing the household." "Oh, other than writing poems, young Mistress Shi also knows how to use the abacus? I just don't know if I can see it for myself." Madame Jiang saw Madame Zhuang's face turn ugly and couldn't help but feel annoyed. At this moment, she couldn't wait for Sang Wan to make a fool of herself. She immediately took advantage of the situation and said aggressively, "That's right. If she doesn't even know how to use the abacus, can she still be the daughter-in-law of the Shi family? Sister Wang, don't you think so?" Madame Zhuang also sneered. Wang did not speak and looked at Sang Wan. "Then, please bring the abacus over. Sang Wan will embarrass herself." Sang Wan was not afraid and smiled. Madame Zhuang did not believe that she had used the abacus in the Sang household and nodded with a smile. She immediately ordered someone to bring it over, but in her heart, she sneered, "Let's see how long you can be stubborn for." Not only did the maidservant bring over a black oily abacus, she also brought over a roll of account books. She smiled and said, "This servant thinks that this abacus is used to calculate accounts. Without an account book, what can the abacus calculate? Coincidentally, this account book was reported from our household's garden last month. Madame Zhuang had already calculated it. Why don't we ask young Mistress Shi to demonstrate it? Acting on your own initiative. Meddlesome." Madame Zhuang glared at the servant, but the corner of her eyes flew towards Sang Wan. She faked a smile and said, "Wan Yang, what do you think?" Deference is no substitute for obedience. Sang Wan did not raise an eyebrow. She took the account book and the abacus and sat down. She set the abacus to 0 and opened the account book to her left. They watched as she flipped through the account book with one hand while her other hand moved as if she was the most dexterous swallow in the clouds. The beads on the abacus jumped up and down like hemp, making crisp crackling sounds. Her movements were as smooth and skillful as moving clouds and flowing water. Her posture was indescribably elegant and beautiful. Everyone was stunned for a moment. The whole place was silent as countless pairs of eyes stared at her skillful hands. Madame Zhuang was also stunned. She was different from Wang. Wang was lazy and all the household affairs were handled by the housekeepers and Gu Fengzi. The housekeepers were supervised by the housekeepers, and the housekeepers were directly led by her son. She did not manage the household affairs. However, Madame Zhuang loved to worry. Most of the accounts that were handed in had to be personally verified. Seeing Sang Wan's skills, she knew that it was real and could not be faked. A total of 3,672 taels of silver. Is that correct? Following a crisp pa sound, Sang Wan's 5 fingers stopped abruptly and fell to the ground like a pearl. The maidservant looked at the paper in her hand and was speechless. However, Madame Zhuang remembered every account book clearly and did not need to look to know that this number was correct. Young Mistress Shi is indeed amazing. Madame Zhuang could not help but sigh. She subconsciously glanced at Tang Yuzhen and her heart was filled with melancholy. Shi Fengju was not worse than her Xian. Could it be that his wife was also better than her own son's wife? All the madams cheered and praised. Even if they did not know how to use the abacus, they had seen their confidantes and daughters-in-law do it. However, no one could do it as well as Sang Wan. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was intoxicating. Wang was grinning from ear to ear. Even she did not know that Sang Wan had such skills. In the future, when the Shi family was handed over to her, she could rest assured. It could be seen that the old master's foresight was indeed not something she could compare to. When the crowd saw that Madame Zhuang and Madame Zhang's faces had turned ugly, they hurriedly chatted and laughed. After all, they were in the Zhuang household and they could not make the hosts uncomfortable. Not far away, behind a cluster of hibiscus flowers, a handsome young man with black hair tied up in a high ponytail stood there, looking listlessly at the gathering. This young man was the only son of Master and Madame Zhuang, Zhuang Weixian. Moreover, it was not his intention to stand there and peep. It was his mother, Madame Zhuang, who strongly urged him to do so. His mother's enthusiasm for his marriage had never subsided. Instead, she became more and more courageous. Today, she let him stand here so that he could observe Miss Tang. He knew that when the banquet was over, his mother would be in high spirits and ask him how Miss Tang was. Did he like it? Was he satisfied? Then, without waiting for him to answer, she would praise Miss Tang endlessly, praising her to the heavens and earth. Zhuang Weixian watched for a while and also listened to the madam's comments. He could not help but nod his head a few times. A few of the poems sounded good, but he did not pay attention to whether it was Miss Tang or young Mistress Shi who wrote them. Subconsciously, he would rather believe that it was young Mistress Shi who wrote them. Who asked his mother to push Miss Tang to him. The unforeseen events that happened later shocked him and he could not help but frown slightly. He felt that his mother and aunt had gone a little overboard. He could not bear to look at young Mistress Shi anymore. He secretly prayed that this young Mistress Shi had a strong heart and would not cry in front of him. Otherwise, the Zhuang family would lose all face. That was too unkind. Of course, even if young Mistress Shi cried, Zhuang Weixian would not feel that there was anything wrong. Because which woman could stand such humiliation? He was very clear about the relationship between that bastard Shi Fengju and his cousin. Furthermore, that bastard had complained to him about the marriage more than once before the Sang family's young mistress married into their family. He was even more disgusted and hostile towards the Sang family's young mistress. This was something that Zhuang Weixian could understand very well. Although their experiences were not exactly the same, in a sense, they were in the same boat. He knew how difficult it was to have a woman who was truly in love with him. He also knew that Miss Sang would definitely be miserable after marrying into the family. Shi Fengju, that brat, looked gentle and harmless, but when he was scheming against someone, he did not even have a draft. He would always be able to hit the nail on the head, and then give you an absolutely fatal blow. Therefore, Miss Sang's life in the Shi family would definitely not be easy. Now that he was humiliated in front of so many people, his heart was touched, and it was not easy for him to endure it. However, he did not expect that what happened next would surprise and shock him. This Miss Sang actually went from being gentle and demure to being overbearing. Her hand at the abacus was even more stunning and admirable. He had never seen someone who could use an abacus so well before. Chapter 54. That bastard, he doesn't know how lucky he is. Zhuang Weixian laughed and sighed. He was envious, jealous, and regretful as he shook his head. Who are you? Why are you here? Zhuang Weixian was still laughing and sighing. The smile on his face hadn't disappeared when a woman suddenly stood in front of him. She stared at him with a pair of vigilant eyes and asked in a deep voice. Zhuang Weixian couldn't help but be startled and blurted out, "Who are you?" This girl wasn't from the Zhuang family. The person who came was Luya. The madams and misses were enjoying the flowers in the garden and were being served by the Zhuang family's servants. The maidservants who came along were also led by the Zhuang family's eldest maidservant to play in the garden. Luya unintentionally saw a person behind the bushes. Out of curiosity, she quietly approached the person. She saw that the person's eyes were fixated on the madams and young misses. As she looked at the person's face, she even revealed a silly smile. Luya became angry. "It's none of your business." Luya raised her chin and disdainfully said, "You lecher, how dare you peek here? If the madams and misses find out, they will expose you. You look like a decent person, but your mind is so dirty. Go, go, go. If you don't go, I will call for help." Lecher? Decent person? Dirty mind? Zhuang Weixian couldn't help but laugh. If his mother heard this, he didn't know how angry she would be. However, he was also very angry. "Do I look that bad?" Zhuang Weixian angrily snorted and touched his chin. He shouldn't be that much worse than Shi Fengju, right? No, he was a little better than him. Shameless. Luya glared at him and impatiently said, "Who cares what you look like? Go, go. If you don't go, I will really call for help. At that time, you will be beaten into a pig's head. You look like a cultured and educated person. Don't you know when to stop?" Zhuang Weixian laughed, but suddenly had the urge to tease Luya. Retracting his smile, he took 2 steps back and bowed to Luya. With a serious expression, he said, "To tell you the truth, I lost my way and mistakenly entered this place. If I was rude to you, please forgive me. I wonder if Miss can point out the way so that I can get out?" Luya didn't know how to react to his sudden change. She hurriedly took 2 steps back and stammered, "Well, I'm not from this family. I don't know the way. Where are you going? Why don't I ask around for you?" Zhuang Weixian was secretly amused. He raised his eyes and saw the words Lin Feng Gu written on the plaque of the pavilion in the northwest. He then said, "The young master of the Zhuang family asked to meet me at Lin Feng Gu." Luya was stunned. She narrowed her eyes and stared at him. "Are you really going to the Wind Pavilion?" "Yeah." Zhuang Weixian nodded seriously. He held back his laughter and sighed. "Unfortunately, the Zhuang family's garden is too big. I couldn't find it even after looking for a long time." Luya snorted and rolled her eyes at him. She said, "Don't make fun of your little grand-aunt. If that's not Lin Feng Gu, then what is it? Don't tell me you didn't see those 3 big words." This time it was Zhuang Weixian's turn to be surprised. He was a little embarrassed that his lie was exposed. He stammered and laughed dryly. You can read." Luya snorted. "That's right. So what if I can read? Don't think you can be so arrogant just because you read 2 books. Do you think everyone is a fool? I think you're definitely not a good person." As she spoke, she unconsciously looked around. Seeing that there was no one around, she secretly thanked her lucky stars. She looked behind Zhuang Weixian, causing him to subconsciously look back. She quickly turned around and ran away. Fortunately, no one saw her. Otherwise, if someone saw her in the Zhuang family's garden with a shady man, not only would she lose face, but first madam and first young mistress would also lose face. Really? Why did she poke her nose into other people's business? Zhuang Weixian knew that he had been fooled. When he turned around, he only saw a slim figure running away. He couldn't help but laugh and shake his head. He had been wise all his life, but he was fooled by a little girl. Really? He didn't know which family this girl belonged to, but her courage wasn't small. Seeing the madams and young ladies standing up, he guessed that they wanted to go to Yuhua Pavilion to watch the play. Zhuang Weixian knew that the task his mother gave him had been barely completed. He brushed his sleeves and turned to leave. Over at the madams and young ladies' side, Sangwon's amazing skill with the abacus was praised by everyone. Just as everyone was praising her, the 4 poems that had been sent to the gentleman for evaluation were sent back. Madame Zhuang's eyes lit up again, hoping that Tang Yuzhen would win this time. Who knew that the 3 gentlemen in the Zhuang residence had unanimously selected Sangwon's work. Madame Zhuang forced a smile and personally handed the bottle of perfume to Sangwon. She smiled faintly and said, "It's really admirable. Wan Nyong really lives up to her name. This perfume suits you just right. Come, pour some out and see if you like it." Although Sangwon had never seen Western perfume in her 2 lifetimes, she had seen a record of it in a novel that had circulated in recent years. It was a joke. It was said that there was a person who didn't know the value of a Western perfume and wanted to pour some out through the small hole to smell it. However, he didn't know that the Western perfume bottle had an exquisite structure. It looked like there was a hole, but the perfume inside couldn't be poured out. Instead, it was cleverly pressed on the cap to evenly spray out a mist. That person poured out the perfume for a long time but couldn't get it out. Obviously, Madame Zhuang also wanted to make fun of her. Sangwon's temperament was cautious. Even if she didn't understand something, she would never test it in front of outsiders, let alone in front of Madame Zhuang. Hearing what was said, she smiled and said, "How can such an exquisite thing not be good? Madame must be joking. Wan Nyong likes it very much. Thank you for your generous gift." Finished speaking, she didn't wait for Madame Zhuang to speak again. She put the perfume bottle into her sleeve and obediently sat beside Wang. Madame Zhuang smiled and could only say a few polite words. Wang's heart, which was in her throat, was finally put down. Speaking of which, Shi Fengjiu also gave her a bottle of perfume. She, Nanny Jiang, Xiu Li, and Xiu Chun had a joke. They clearly saw that there was perfume inside and there were small holes on the outside, but they couldn't pour it out. In the end, Xiu Li, that lass, somehow pressed on the right spot and sprayed it all over Xiu Chun. Xiu Chun was so frightened that she screamed and the master and servants laughed together. Even if the Sang family's entire fortune, they wouldn't be able to buy such a precious bottle. How could Sangwon have seen it before? If what Madame Zhuang said was true, it would be a big joke. At that moment, someone from Yuhua Pavilion came to report that the play was ready. Madame Zhuang put away her mood and invited everyone to go over with a smile. Intentionally or unintentionally, there were more people around Wang and Sangwon. The madams and young misses of the various families took the initiative to speak to Sangwon. Obviously, they had accepted her position as the young mistress of the Shi family. She was thoughtful and talented. No matter how capable Gu Fengzi was, it was impossible for her to surpass her. Although Wang didn't care about the family's affairs and loved her niece, she wasn't a foolish person. Otherwise, she wouldn't have insisted on this engagement. It could be seen that she wouldn't allow the matter of favoring the concubine and neglecting the wife to happen. In other words, Sangwon's position in the Shi family was already set in stone and could no longer be shaken. If she didn't take advantage of the fact that she was still young and had just entered the family to befriend the future mistress of the Shi family, her weight would be much lighter in the future. Once they entered Yuhua Pavilion, everyone took their seats. After a round of polite greetings, the madams all chose a play. On the stage, the sleeves of the water fluttered lightly, and the performers began to sing and act out their roles with thousands of twists and turns. Only then did the atmosphere become better. It wasn't until the sun set in the west that the madams left one after another. Madame Zhuang sent them off with a smile, but that smile couldn't be said to be a bit forced. On the carriage back to the residence, Wang finally laughed heartily. She couldn't help but be elated when she thought of Madame Zhuang's deflated look. "Our Wan Nyang is exhausted today." Wang smiled. The more she looked at Sang Wan, the more satisfied she was. She said generously, "You should rest well these few days. There's no need to go and pay your respects. If you want to eat something, just ask the kitchen to prepare it. If you want to buy something, just ask the head housekeeper to buy it. Let's not talk about other things, but our family doesn't lack money." Sang Wan knew that her mother-in-law always spoke like this, so she hurriedly thanked her with a smile. Who knew that before going to bed at night, Nanny Jiang would come again? Sang Wan didn't expect that someone would come at this time. She quickly took a jade hairpin to tidy up her hair and put on an autumn-colored outer robe to welcome her. Wang had been happily praising Sang Wan ever since she returned from the Zhuang residence. Nanny Jiang was a shrewd person. She knew that young mistress would definitely win face for old mistress today. When she saw Sang Wan coming out to welcome her, she quickly smiled and said, "Young mistress, quickly go in. Don't catch a cold from the night wind." How can the old slave be worthy of young mistress's courtesy? Polite words were enough to make one's heart feel better. There was no need to take it seriously. Sang Wan smiled and ordered the servants to bring a small stool for Nanny Jiang to sit on. Hong Yi had already cleverly served tea. Nanny Jiang didn't hurry to sit down or receive the tea. After thanking her, she brought forward a foot-long box in her hands and said with a smile, "Old mistress specially asked the old slave to send this to nourish young mistress's body. Old mistress also said that this high-quality bird's nest is the most nourishing. She asked young mistress to ask the servants to boil a bowl of it every night and eat it before going to bed." Sang Wan personally took the box and handed it to Mama Li, who was standing at the side. She smiled gratefully and said, "Mother has to worry about such a small matter. I really feel uneasy. It's late today. I'll go over tomorrow to thank Mother." Nanny Jiang smiled and said, "No wonder old mistress said that young mistress is sensible and polite. Out of 1,000 people, there won't be one like young mistress. Old mistress said that young mistress should just accept it and that there's no need to go over and thank her. Old mistress treats you as her daughter. You don't have to be so polite. Old mistress said that it's enough as long as she knows that you have the heart." Sang Wan could only smile and agree. She then invited Nanny Jiang to sit down and drink tea. Sang Wan thought that since it was already late, Nanny Jiang would take her leave. Unexpectedly, Nanny Jiang thanked Sang Wan and sat down. While drinking tea, Nanny Jiang continued to chat with Sang Wan. Her words were full of praises for Sang Wan, such as how old mistress valued her and how much she cared for her. Sang Wan could only smile perfunctorily. After sending Nanny Jiang, who was full of smiles, away with great difficulty, Sang Wan returned to her room to rest. Luya made a mattress in front of the bed to accompany her. "Young mistress, Nanny Jiang is very talkative tonight." As usual, the master and servant would chat a little before going to bed. Luya chattered endlessly. She usually doesn't talk much. Chapter 55. You think so too? Sang Wan lifted her hand and placed it under her neck as she sighed softly. "That's right, it's so obvious, who wouldn't notice it?" Luya's eyes lit up and she clapped her hands with a smile. "This servant knows now. It must be because young mistress has helped our Shi family gain some face today. Old mistress is happy, so Nanny Jiang is trying to curry favor with young mistress." Sang Wan giggled and scolded with a smile. "I thought you had improved after following Mama Li for a while, but you're still a muddle-headed worm." Luya was taught by Mama Li wholeheartedly. The feeling of being enlightened often accompanied her. From time to time, she would share her experiences with Mama Li, and Mama Li would also praise her with a gratified expression. She felt that her observation skills were not as good as Mama Lee's, but compared to the past, it was still 2 levels higher. Hearing Sang Won's words, she was dissatisfied and pouted. "Young mistress, please reason with this servant. How is this servant muddle-headed?" Sang Won propped up her chin and looked at her with a smile. "Nanny Jiang is an old person who has served old mistress for her entire life. Even young master has to respect her. As long as she doesn't cause any trouble, the Sure family will have to take care of her when she's old. Why would she want to curry favor with me?" Luya was stunned for a moment before blurting out, "That's right, if she wants to curry favor with you, she might even make Miss Gu unhappy. There's no reason for her to be so foolish as to get herself involved." Young mistress, this servant has misspoken." Sang Won's eyes flashed with a trace of loneliness, but she smiled and shook her head. "You're right, there's no reason for her to be so foolish." "Young mistress," Luya was a little embarrassed and took the initiative to ask, "How about this servant help you find out?" "Don't," Sang Won said. "We can't easily find out about First Madam's affairs. Don't act recklessly." Luya was slightly embarrassed and hurriedly said with a smile, "Of course this servant won't go by myself. Wouldn't that cause trouble for young mistress? This servant can convey a message to Godmother." "Young mistress, don't worry. There's nothing that Godmother can't find out about in this residence. Furthermore, I can guarantee that no one will notice." Luya said proudly and felt honored. "That won't do." Sang Won still said, "The First Madam is the first young master's biological mother. Do you think Mama Lee would do such a thing? Besides, I don't want to make things difficult for her. Don't worry, if there really is something, Nanny Jiang will say it herself. We don't need to ask." Luya's eyes widened and were full of doubt and disbelief. Sang Won only smiled slightly and said, "Go to sleep." Then she didn't say anything else. For the next few days, Wang Shi showed her unparalleled love and care for Sang Won. Good things were sent to Ning Garden one after another. Clothes, jewelry, rouge, face powder, antique ornaments, toys, and all kinds of fresh fruits, snacks, trendy delicacies, and so on were all sent to Ning Garden. Everyone could tell that eldest young mistress had won the favor. Eldest young mistress was clearly telling everyone who was the real future mistress of the residence. Everyone in Ning Garden also rose in status. Luya, Xingji, and the others were fawned on by their mothers and sisters wherever they went. The number of stewards' wives and wives who went to Ning Garden to greet them also increased. Sang Won was always polite, and everyone was happy. They also played along with First Madam and praised her to the skies. Every time Wang sent something or a message, it was always Nanny Jiang who came to convey it. Sang Won politely smiled and waited for Nanny Jiang to speak. Unexpectedly, after a few days, Nanny Jiang's smile became strained and forced, but she still didn't say anything. Sang Won was very puzzled and couldn't help but secretly ponder. Her mind suddenly flashed and she came back to her senses. Nanny Jiang wouldn't say anything unless she took the initiative to ask. Of course, it was useless for her to ask Nanny Jiang. She should ask Wang. "I haven't come to greet Mother for a few days. Mother's complexion is better than before." Today, Sang Won came to the main courtyard dressed neatly and leisurely greeted Wang with a smile. "Isn't that so?" Wang said with a smile. "Mother's heart is happy. She eats well and sleeps well, so her complexion is naturally better. It's just a pity," Wang pretended to sigh. "Recently, there has been a troublesome matter in my heart. If it can be solved as soon as possible, there will be no knot in my heart." Sang Won was originally thinking about how to get her mother-in-law to speak, but who knew that her mother-in-law couldn't wait. This was good, and it saved her a lot of trouble. Seeing Nanny Jiang's eyes signal the maids to leave, Sang Won's expression also became dignified. She stood up and said to Wang, "Mother, if you have any troubles, why don't you tell your daughter-in-law? Even if your daughter-in-law doesn't have the ability to solve your problems, I think it will make you feel better." Wang didn't pay attention to Nanny Jiang's expression and hurriedly said, "Wan Nyong this matter really does have something to do with you. To solve this matter, we have to rely on you." "Me?" Sang Won was puzzled. Wang gestured for her to sit down and asked with a smile, "Wan Yang, tell me honestly, how do I treat you as your mother-in-law?" Sang Wan wanted to get up again, but Wang insisted on sitting down. She could only continue to sit and said, "You love your daughter-in-law very much and are considerate in everything. Your daughter-in-law is truly grateful to you and is also filial to you. Is that true?" "Of course." Wan Yang wouldn't dare to lie. Wang nodded her head in satisfaction and asked, "What do you think of Fengzi's character?" Hearing Wang mention Gu Fengzi, Sang Wan's heart subconsciously tightened. She nodded her neck stiffly and squeezed out a smile. "Cousin Fengzi, she is very good." Wang heaved a sigh of relief and said, "If you think she's good, then I'm relieved." "Wan Yang, you've been married into our Shi family for quite some time now. That cough, the matter between Fengzi and Fengju, you more or less know about it, right?" Sang Wan was embarrassed and shocked. Her heartbeat quickened and she stuttered, Why did you bring that up?" Since the most difficult thing had been said, Wang didn't have any more misgivings and simply said, "Fengzi will definitely marry Fengju as a concubine, I won't hide it from you." "Wan Yang, you won't have any thoughts about it, right? You're a good woman, you don't need me to tell you that you should follow your husband's wishes." Sang Wan's face flushed red from embarrassment. With great difficulty, she resisted the urge to sniffle and said softly, "Wan Yang understands. As long as my husband likes it, Wan Yang will not have any objections." "That's good." Hearing Wang speak, Sang Wan's body suddenly trembled uncontrollably. She felt as if she had fallen into an ice cellar and fell into a deep fear. She had a premonition that what Wang was going to say was something she didn't want to hear the most. It was something that haunted her nightmares from her past life. However, Wang's voice sounded steadily, "I think, since Fengzi is going to marry into our family, the earlier she marries 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 into our family. At least both of you can get to know each other quickly and get along well in the future. Furthermore, Fengzi will have a better reason to take care of things." "Wan Yang, what do you say?" "What do I say? What can I say?" Sang Wan did not open her mouth. She bit her lips tightly and tried her best to control her sobbing. Humiliation, embarrassment, anger, unwillingness, and helplessness swept over her, squeezing her heart until she could not breathe. She had married into the family for less than 2 months. Was her mother-in-law so impatient to marry Gu Fengzi into the family? Everyone was thinking for Gu Fengzi, but who would have thought of her? If the Shi family did not like the Sang family, why didn't they reject the marriage in the first place? Was marrying her a great gift? Was she supposed to feel lucky and be grateful? The Sang family had never cared about this marriage. She, Sang Wan, had never hoped to marry into this rich family. At this moment, Sang Wan resented her mother-in-law, Wang, even though she knew that Gu Fengzi was behind her mother-in-law's decision. "Don't worry," Wang thought that she had misgivings and assured her, "You are our Shi family's official daughter-in-law. No one will be able to snatch away your position as the young mistress. In the future, when Fengzi gives birth to a son and is promoted to a second wife, she will have to respect you as sister." Wang's tongue spun and she finally felt that it was not appropriate to say those words. She held it in and said, "I will also teach Fengzi to respect you. You are educated and reasonable while she is smart. The two of you will definitely get along well. It is Fengju's fortune to have the two of you by his side." "Yes." Sang Wan endured the pain in her heart and secretly breathed a sigh of relief before saying softly, "Everything will be decided by mother." Wang hesitated for a moment before saying hesitantly, "For this matter, it is better for you to make the decision. This will show how virtuous and magnanimous you are. How about this, when Fengju returns, you will take the initiative to mention it. When that time comes, Fengju will definitely have a whole new level of respect for you. He will respect you even more. What do you think?" Sang Wan's body turned cold and her face turned pale. She almost couldn't breathe. Virtuous? Magnanimous? It was clearly a bitter fruit, but she was forced to swallow it and even wanted her to smile and say that it was delicious. And she even said that it was for her own good? Sangwon suddenly felt an unprecedented sense of disappointment and sorrow. She thought that everything would be different and that everything would develop differently. She didn't expect that after going around in circles, everything would have its own destiny. After going around in a circle, she was back to square one. Could it be that in this life, she would not be able to escape from a miserable and lonely life? So be it. She had already gone through so much in her previous life. In this life, she might as well throw away her pride. At most, she would just leave after a year. She didn't believe that there would be no place for her in this world. Even if she were to die, this life would not be worse than her previous one. Mother is right. Wan Nyong understands. When Lord Husband returns, Wan Nyong will definitely tell him personally. Sangwon endured the pain in her heart and said softly, "Mother knows that you are the most sensible. Unlike those shallow and jealous people who only know how to cause trouble." Wang was overjoyed and could not help but hold Sangwon's hand and pat it. She then raised her head and smiled towards the direction of the partition. "Fengzi, why aren't you coming out?" Sangwon was startled and looked over. She saw Gu Fengzi in a begonia red dress walking over shyly. She turned around and called out, "Aunt Wang." The corner of her lips curled up slightly. Chapter 56. Good, good. Wang chuckled and patted Gu Fengzi's hand before ordering Sangwon to sit down. She gestured to Gu Fengzi, "Quick, come forward and greet Wan Nyong." "Yes." Gu Fengzi took 2 steps forward and curtsied elegantly towards Sangwon. "Cousin-in-law." Wang scolded with a smile. "What cousin-in-law? You should call her sister instead. Since Fengju isn't here, the two of you can get close to each other." Sangwon felt bitter in her heart and even more bitter in her mouth. What did she mean by "since Fengju isn't here, the two of you can get close to each other"? Only her mother-in-law would be able to say such ridiculous words. Gu Fengzi became even more shy after hearing that. She raised her eyes and looked at Sangwon. "Sister? Sister is too polite." When their eyes met, Sangwon could clearly see the ridicule and provocation in Gu Fengzi's eyes. She smiled and took off the jade bracelet on her wrist before putting it on Gu Fengzi's wrist. She chuckled. "Sister, you don't have to be so polite. I didn't prepare anything." "Sister, please don't dislike this little thing." "Why would I dislike sister's things? I'll definitely treat it like a treasure and hide it." Gu Fengzi giggled. Wang was happy to see Sangwon being so tactful. She smiled happily and said to Gu Fengzi, "You're lucky. In the future, you must properly respect Wan Nyong. If I hear that Wan Nyong is wronged in any way, I won't let it go." "Aunt Wang. Aunt Wang is biased." Gu Fengzi smiled coquettishly. "How would I dare to make sister feel wronged?" Fengzi still has this bit of self-awareness. When she said the last sentence, her eyes dimmed and her voice became deeper. "I know you won't. I'm just giving you advice for nothing," Wang quickly added. Gu Fengzi smiled again. "Aunt Wang's teachings are right. Fengzi should learn from them. Isn't that right, cousin-in-law?" "Oh, no, sister." Sangwon smiled and nodded gently. After coming out of Wang's place, Sangwon subconsciously looked up. The sky was high and blue. The sun shone through the thin clouds and shone on the ground. The wind blew gently. The trees were green and beautiful. Sangwon suddenly felt a little absent-minded. She didn't know if it was reality or a dream. Her posture and steps were as graceful and calm as usual. Only she knew that every step she took was uneven, as if she was stepping on a pile of cotton. She raised her head abruptly and saw a young married woman holding a willow branch in front of the pavilion, staring at the koi fish in the pond in boredom. It was second young Mistress Shi. Only then did Sangwon realize that she had unknowingly turned into the garden. After thinking for a while, she walked towards the evening fragrance pavilion with heavy steps. "Sister-in-law. What a coincidence." Second Shi family's young mistress heard the commotion and raised her head. Seeing that it was her, she hurriedly got up to greet her. "What are you doing here alone?" Sang Wan smiled and walked in hand with her. What else can I be doing? I'm just daydreaming out of boredom. Second young Mistress Shi smiled bitterly and said with an indescribable sense of loneliness and dejection. Sang Wan did not expect her to be so direct and was stunned for a moment. Second young Mistress Shi giggled and said, Sister-in-law, you won't blame me for being rude, right? In this manner, only in front of eldest sister-in-law do I dare to speak my true feelings. You're fine, what's wrong? Sang Wan asked. Fine. What's fine? Second young Mistress Shi sneered and said softly, I have secretly sent a letter to my parents. I want to go back to my parents' house for a while. Sang Wan's breathing stopped and she felt dejected for a moment. Second young Mistress Shi's life was not as good as hers. But at least she could go home and have her parents to shelter her from the wind and rain. What about her? She couldn't even go home. Big brother and sister-in-law had it hard enough. She could not add more trouble to them. Second young Mistress Shi smiled and said, In the eyes of outsiders, we are so lucky to have entered the Shi household. But who would believe that we are soaking in bitter water? Kiki, we are actually quite pitiful. But no one would believe it. And they would say that we are not satisfied. Second young Mistress Shi choked and quickly wiped the corners of her eyes. Actually, my request is very simple. I just want to live a peaceful life with my husband. But this is just wishful thinking. Sister-in-law. Sang Wan's heart was touched and tears welled up in her eyes. She patted second young Mistress Shi's shoulder lightly. Second young Mistress Shi leaned on her shoulder and smiled embarrassedly. I lost my composure. Sister-in-law, you won't blame me, right? Sang Wan shook her head and said gently, Don't think too much. Happiness is a day. Sadness is also a day. Why make life difficult for yourself? Don't worry, second young master will definitely come back. Not to mention other things, his parents are still here. Can he not come back for the rest of his life? He is still young and full of vigor, but he is only 1 or 2 years old. Think about it, how can a woman like that be relied on? He will definitely realize his mistake and turn back. Second young Mistress Shi's expression relaxed and she took a deep breath and smiled gratefully. Thank you, sister-in-law. I understand what you are saying. Although I am not from a scholarly family like sister-in-law, the daughters of the Zhou household have also been taught the rules since young. Since I have entered the Shi household, I can only endure it. Why should I make life difficult for myself? But, second young Mistress Shi smiled bitterly, that mother-in-law of mine, second young Mistress Shi did not dare to speak ill of her mother-in-law to her sister-in-law. She smiled bitterly and sighed. She vented her anger on me and blamed me for everything. She would scold me for the slightest thing and find ways to torment me. I really can't take it anymore. Sister-in-law, to be honest, I really envy you. Even though you have Gu Fengzi, Big Brother and Big Aunt treat you extremely well. At least no one would torment you for no reason. Sang Wan's face turned pale and she forced a smile and said softly, We both have our own difficulties, so let's not talk about it. Envy her? Hearing this, Sang Wan did not know whether to laugh or cry. So there were people who envied her. But if she knew that Gu Fengzi was about to enter the Shi household, and if she knew the real relationship between her and Shi Fengju, perhaps she would not be envious of her. At least, she had more to look forward to. As the two of them were talking, a servant with a flat head and a straight face wearing a bright red vest and a white silk dress rushed over and said anxiously, Second young Mistress Shi, second old Mistress Shi is asking why you are not back yet. She wants you to go back quickly. Second young Mistress Shi glanced coldly at the servant and said lightly, I know. You go back first. The servant hesitated for a moment, but seeing that second young Mistress Shi had no intention of leaving, she could only agree and leave. Sang Wan saw that second old Mistress Shi had sent someone to rush second young Mistress Shi and wanted to leave. However, second young Mistress Shi pulled her arm reluctantly and said, Sister-in-law, can you accompany me for a while longer? But, it's all right, just for a while. All right. Sang Wan could not bear to reject second young Mistress Shi's pleading face and nodded her head. Not long after, Second old Mistress Sher brought a few servants and rushed over angrily. She shouted, "I'd like to see what you're doing. How dare you disobey my orders? Time and time again, you still can't come. Which family's rule is this? A daughter-in-law is even more arrogant than a mother-in-law." Second young Mistress Sher subconsciously took 2 steps back and hid beside Sang-won. She defended herself. "I am talking to sister-in-law. Is there anything you need from me?" Seeing that she was avoiding her and even daring to talk back, second old Mistress Sher shouted angrily, "Rebel, rebel! Why aren't you coming over? Do you think I will eat you if I am a tiger?" However, second young Mistress Sher refused to go over. She held onto Sang-won's arm tightly and said nervously and fearfully, "Mother, I will go back in a while, I will go back in a while. I am not afraid of you. You are also not a tiger. You." Second old Mistress Sher's blood rushed to her head. She was so embarrassed that she flew into a rage and rushed forward to grab second young Mistress Sher. Second young Mistress Sher finally let go of Sang-won and ran away while screaming. Sang-won's heart skipped a beat. She seemed to have felt something, but before she could think it through, she heard a scream. "Ah!" Followed by a splash, second young mistress of the Sher family fell into the pond. "Help! Help!" Second young Mistress Sher slapped the pool with all her might, causing the water to splash everywhere. Her whole body was bobbing up and down in the water. This. Second old Mistress Sher's legs gave way and she fell to the ground. Her face was pale and the servants stood there in a daze. Quickly call for help, quickly call for help." Sang-won shouted. The servants were jolted awake. One of them shouted and ran off while the other 2 went forward to help second old Mistress Sher up. Sang-won was at a loss and her face was pale. Seeing second old Mistress Sher staring at her and walking towards her, her face became even paler. "Da Lang's wife." Second old Mistress Sher's gaze was fixed on her and her pale face squeezed out a stiff smile. Sang-won subconsciously stepped back and her lips moved. "Second aunt. Eldest sister-in-law." A voice came from behind the fake mountain. Sang-won and second old Mistress Sher subconsciously looked up and saw Sher Lien standing there in a daze with a maidservant. In her hands, she was holding a flower branch. "Niece." Second old Mistress Sher hurriedly called out. However, Sher Lien glanced at her in fear. She let out a soft, "Ah," and ran away with her maidservant. Second old Mistress Sher panicked and repeatedly called out, "Niece, niece, come back." How could Sher Lien hear her? Sang-won secretly heaved a sigh of relief. She leaned against the pavilion pillar weakly and her back was drenched in cold sweat. Second Sher family's young mistress was quickly rescued and carried back home. The second household was in a state of chaos again. Wang Sher also went to take a look and called for second old Master Sher to enter the side hall. The 2 of them talked about something and second old Master Sher lost his temper and scolded his wife. The originally chaotic situation became even more chaotic. "It's all this servant's fault. This servant shouldn't have left. Fortunately, young mistress is fine, if not." In Ning Garden, Luya said with lingering fear. "It has nothing to do with you, don't blame yourself." Sang-won shook her head and smiled. She was the one who sent Luya away because she wanted to walk around alone. "Thank you, young mistress." Luya looked at her gratefully. Seeing that her face was still pale, she smiled and helped her up. "Young mistress, are you frightened? Why don't you lie down and rest for a while? This servant will ask someone to prepare a bowl of calming soup." Sang-won smiled and nodded. She laid on the chaise lounge and covered her chest with an embroidered blanket. She was indeed frightened. Second young Mistress Sher must have decided to make things difficult for her today and purposely angered second old Mistress Sher. She just happened to pass by and was stopped by her. However, Sang-won did not blame her. After all, she only did it in passing and did not really set her up. Chapter 57. The one who truly frightened her was second old Mistress Sher. If not for the sudden appearance of Sher Lien and her servant, second old Mistress She would have definitely made her the scapegoat. The 3 maidservants who were present at the scene were all her people, so it would be a piece of cake for her to silence them. Shi Lian's appearance made her unsure if Shi Lian had seen anything, so she let her off. Sang Wan could not imagine what Wang would think if she pushed her sister-in-law into the pond, and how Gu Fengzi would make a fuss about it. After all, second young Mistress She had no enmity with her, nor did she have any interest in the matter. She did not even have an excuse to explain herself, and the only thing she could say was that it was an accident. However, there was no evidence to back up such a statement, and it was up to the imagination of the listener. From now on, she would never go to the garden for no reason. Even if she did, she would have to have her own people by her side. Sang Wan thought to herself. Not 2 days later, second young Mistress She's mother and sister-in-law came knocking. Seeing her daughter lying on the bed in a dazed, aggrieved manner, Madame Zhou was heartbroken. She cried bitterly and scolded her daughter indirectly. That Zhou family's daughter-in-law was also capable. She persuaded her while scolding indirectly. The mother-in-law and daughter-in-law scolded second Lord Shi and second old Mistress Shi until their faces turned red with shame. In the end, Wang had no choice but to step in and appease old Mistress Zhou. She even used her status as the eldest sister-in-law to reprimand second Lord Shi and his wife. Only then did old Mistress Zhou stop crying. Naturally, old Mistress Zhou insisted on bringing her daughter home to recuperate. However, second old Mistress Shi was anxious and strongly disagreed. It was already shameful enough that her son eloped with a brothel prostitute. If her daughter-in-law wanted to return home to recuperate, what would people say about her? Since old Mistress Zhou was in the right, why would she be afraid of her? She began to complain about her daughter's grievances and her son-in-law. She even asked second old Mistress Shi when her son-in-law would return. Second old Mistress Shi was speechless and could only watch as old Mistress Zhou ordered the servants to pack her daughter-in-law's bags and left the Shi household on the same day. After hearing what Luya said, Sang Wan could not help but secretly envy second young mistress of the Shi family. At the very least, when she returned in the future, second madam would not dare to treat her like before. There was no such thing as an impermeable wall in the world. Originally, Wang had instructed her to keep the news of Gu Fengzi's impending marriage a secret until Shi Fengji returned, and Sang Wan took the initiative to bring it up. However, after 10 to 20 days, almost everyone in the Shi family knew about it. Gu Fengzi kept apologizing in front of Wang. She said that she shouldn't have told her father when he came to visit. She said that she didn't expect him to be so unreliable. He went to her aunt and made a fuss about the betrothal gifts. The whole Fu knew about it. She also said that she shouldn't have been careless and accidentally called her cousin-in-law a sister, in front of others. Wang had never counted on Gu Jin's mouth. The only reason why Gu Fengzi revealed it to him was to give him some hope. Who knew that it would backfire? Wang had nothing to say and could only sigh. Forget it. Since the news has already spread, there's no need to hide it anymore. Let's make the necessary preparations. When Fengju returns, we'll settle the matter so as to avoid any more complications. Gu Jin's ruckus became more and more serious, and Wang was getting tired of dealing with it. However, she did not know that it was all Gu Fengzi's doing to force her to make a decision. Gu Fengzi was overjoyed, but her face was full of gratitude. She obediently said that everything would be decided by her aunt. Wang smiled and nodded. She then asked someone to call Sang Wan over for a discussion. Sang Wan sneered. Gu Fengzi was of course unwilling to let her do this favor to Shi Fengju. She would not let her have the chance to be magnanimous and virtuous. She had already expected that this matter would be leaked in advance. So be it, sooner or later it would be the same. However, if Gu Fengzi were to treat her as a soft persimmon and let her do whatever she wanted, that would be letting her off too easily. Sang Wan's face naturally carried a smile as she said softly, "Mother, don't worry. It's not like our Shi family has never taken in a concubine before. Everything will be done according to the rules. Although time is a little tight, it shouldn't be too difficult. I guarantee that it will be done properly." Gu Fengzi's face turned ugly when she heard that. She was her cousin's childhood sweetheart and her aunt's niece. She grew up in the Shi family and even managed the inner chambers of the Shi family. How could she, Gu Fengzi, be compared to an ordinary concubine? Wang Shi was startled for a moment. She could tell that Sang Wan's gentle words were different from usual. She tried to figure out what she meant but felt that there was nothing to it. "You're right," Wang said hesitantly. "There are so many people in our Shi family. No matter how tight the time is, there's nothing that can't be done." "Mother, you're right." Sang Wan smiled and said, "Our Shi family is a family of rules. Even if time is tight, we have to follow the rules. We can't be laughed at by outsiders." "Yes, yes." Wang loved to hear such words. She could not help but smile and nod repeatedly. With that, the tone of this matter was set. It was just an ordinary concubine entering the Shi family. Gu Fengzi gritted her teeth so hard that they almost broke, but there was nothing she could do. After all, she could not ask for any conditions personally. Gu Fengzi could not help but think that it would be great if her big cousin was here. It would be easy to talk to him in private. She could not help but feel a little regretful. She should not have made this matter clear so quickly. But then again, big cousin? How long did he expect her to trust him? In comparison, the benefits she was about to get were more worth it. Sang Wan smiled again and said, "Although the household has always been managed by my younger sister, we can't let her handle her own marriage. It won't sound good if word gets out. If mother can trust me, Wan Nyang is willing to share mother's worries." "Good, good." Before Gu Fengzi could open her mouth, Wang nodded her head in relief. She could not help but smile at Sang Wan and said, "My child, mother was worried that you would have some thoughts in your heart. I didn't think that you would be so considerate and virtuous. Then I'll leave this matter to you. That's not very good." Gu Fengzi did not care about anything else in a moment of desperation and said, "Sister has never taken care of the household before. Can sister handle it? If you make a mistake, won't we lose face for the Shi family? Moreover, if sister has to work so hard for me, I'll feel bad." Wang hesitated and said to Sang Wan, "That's true. Wan Nyang, can you really do it?" Li Shi could not stand Gu Fengzi's frivolous attitude. How could she not know what Gu Fengzi was thinking? She sneered in her heart and said with a smile, "Young mistress, don't worry. Young mistress doesn't understand. I, the old slave, will overstep my boundaries and do it. I didn't manage to make it in time for young master's wedding. I'm happy that I can contribute to young master's concubine. Miss Gu, you don't have to feel bad about it." Gu Fengzi was secretly angry, but she could only smile and say, "For Mama to think so highly of me, Fengzi thanks Mama." Li Shi waved her hand and said without any trace of politeness, "Miss Gu, you don't have to thank me. I'm just doing things for young master. It's my duty and I don't deserve Miss Gu's thanks." What she meant was that what she was doing had nothing to do with Gu Fengzi. Even if young master were to marry someone else, she would still do the same. Gu Fengzi smiled embarrassedly and gave Wang a wronged look. Wang gave her a comforting look. Of course, she would not reprimand Mama Li and said with a smile, "Since that's the case, then it's settled. This matter will be handed over to Wan Nyang. I'll need sister's help." Sang Wan smiled and said, "Mother, don't worry. Mama is old and experienced. I'll humbly seek her advice and discuss everything with her. Old slave will also do his best to support young mistress." Mama Li added. When Gu Fengzi heard that, she felt dizzy. Unexpectedly, the words that made her even more dizzy came after that. Mama Li continued, "Missy, there's one more thing. Old slave has spoken out of turn. The hierarchy in the household cannot be messed up. Miss Gu is a concubine after marrying into the household. With young mistress in the household, there's no reason for a concubine to be in charge. Missy, what do you think?" Wang could not help but look at Sang Wan. She thought about how she had already wronged her daughter-in-law because of Gu Fengzi. Moreover, her daughter-in-law's performance in the Zhuang household was also quite capable. With the help of Mama Lee, the steward's wife, and the housekeepers, it was better to leave the household to her. What's more, leaving the household to a concubine to manage was indeed unseemly. She nodded and smiled. I almost forgot about it if you didn't mention it. That's right, Wan Yong, from today onwards, I'll leave the household to you. If there's anything you don't understand, you can discuss it with Mama Lee and the other housekeepers. Oh, and there's also Fengzi. She's very familiar with the household, so you can discuss it with her more. Fengzi, you can't hide anything from her. Gu Fengzi was so depressed that she almost vomited blood. But now, she had not even married into the household, and all of a sudden, she had nothing left. Aunt Wang. Gu Fengzi was so angry that she was about to spit fire, but on the surface, she smiled happily and acted coquettishly. How would Fengzi dare? From today onwards, we'll be a real family. Even if Aunt Wang did not mention it, Fengzi will still help sister manage the household. Wang did not seem to understand the meaning behind Gu Fengzi's words and nodded with a smile. Aunt Wang is relieved to hear that. This shameless woman. How could young master fall for such a person? Mama Lee secretly sneered and said, Missy, since this matter has been settled, the old slave thinks it's best to quickly pick a date to send Miss Gu home. This sedan chair has to be carried out from the Gu household. Gu Fengzi was stunned and was speechless. You're right, Wang held her forehead and laughed. Thank you for reminding me, otherwise I wouldn't have thought of this. Since there's no need to trouble two people, this matter, Wan Yang. Mother, don't worry. In these 2 days, Wan Yang will arrange for a carriage to send younger sister back. The household should also hurry to tidy up, Sang Wan said with a smile. Mama Lee continued, Before Miss Gu leaves, I'll have to trouble you to hand over the keys and make sure everything is clear, so as to avoid trouble. Of course. Gu Fengzi squeezed out a few words from between her teeth and the smile on her face was somewhat sinister. Chapter 58. Young mistress, just you wait. Once she marries into the family, she'll be a concubine. Young mistress, please act like you're the first wife. You can do whatever you want to him and manipulate him however you want. Let's see if she dares to say a single word of no. In Ning Garden, Mama Lee was full of fighting spirit as she spoke. Once she heard that Gu Fengzi was about to marry into the family, Mama Lee was shocked and angry at first, but after she calmed down, she seemed to have a card up her sleeve. Instead, she had a calmness as if the dust had settled. When she was the young miss of a cousin, other than Big Madam, no one could do anything to her. Once she became a concubine, no one would be able to protect her. Realizing this, Mama Lee even hoped that Gu Fengzi would marry into the family as soon as possible so that she could use Sang Wan's identity to properly discipline her. She wanted to see if she could still act like a vixen. It was precisely because she understood Mama Lee's thoughts that Sang Wan didn't tell Mama Lee a single word about her grievances in this matter. She also didn't ask Mama Lee to help stop or disrupt this matter. This was because she knew that not only would Mama Lee not agree, but she would also be disgusted. No matter how much Mama Lee didn't like Gu Fengzi, as long as Shi Fengju liked her, she wouldn't oppose her marrying into the family. She only disliked Gu Fengzi for not being obedient enough and didn't serve Shi Fengju as if he was the sky. What Mama Lee wanted to do was to help her discipline Gu Fengzi until she became obedient. That was all. Sang Wan sighed inwardly. Mama Lee had underestimated Gu Fengzi's position in Shi Fengju's heart. Moreover, what qualifications did she have to discipline Gu Fengzi? Shi Fengju wouldn't agree either. In the main courtyard, Wang was nagging at Gu Fengzi, telling her to be patient for a few days when she returned home. She also told her to bring more money and her personal maidservant back with her. She also told her not to have any conflicts with her father. Gu Fengzi nodded from time to time as she listened to her advice, reluctant to leave. Aunt, I really can't bear to leave you. When I'm not by your side, you have to take good care of yourself. It's getting hotter by the day, so don't be greedy for the cold. Don't use too much of those cold things. Don't go out at noon when the sun is high, and don't stay cooped up in the house all day. Go out for a walk in the morning and evening. It's good for your health. Wang couldn't help but feel reluctant. Holding her hand, she smiled and said, Okay, Aunt knows. Hee, you're still the closest to your aunt after all. You should go home. Don't worry, your aunt won't mistreat you. She then smiled and said, The next time we meet, you should call your aunt Mother. Mother Jiang, who was at the side, raised her eyelids and opened her mouth, but didn't say anything. Gu Fengzi's eyes lit up, and she nodded shyly. Fengzi, I'm also looking forward to that day. After saying that, she felt embarrassed and hurriedly left while Wang laughed happily. When she returned to Peony Park, there were 2 or 3 stewards' wives waiting for her. When they saw her, they hurriedly went forward to greet her with a smile. Each of them had something to report, or they took out a tile to retrieve something. Gu Fengzi then braced herself and took care of them one by one. The stewards' wives wanted to curry favor with their future grand aunt, who held real power, so they poured out flattery like water. If it was any other time, Gu Fengzi would definitely be full of smiles and proud of herself. All 36,000 pores on her body would exude a sense of comfort. However, when she thought about how she would soon have to hand over her power, these words were especially grating on her ears. When she thought about the expressions of these stewards' wives after she lost her power, Gu Fengzi couldn't help but shiver. No. She wouldn't back out so easily. Gu Fengzi used excuses to delay things, and dragged it on for another 4 to 5 days. Sangwon also didn't want to rush her too much, so she let Mama Li speak to her. She clearly told her that if she didn't hand over her power, there would be no way to arrange for her marriage. If anything were to go wrong, she would have to deal with it herself. Gu Fengzi was conflicted, but she knew that Sangwon was telling the truth. Wang Shi had already handed this matter over to Sangwon to handle, so it was up to Sangwon to make the arrangements. She couldn't possibly command the Shi family to prepare for her marriage, or else she would become a laughing stock. Gu Fengzi had no choice but to say that there were still some small matters that needed to be settled. At the latest, she could hand them over to Sangwon in 2 days. After hearing that, Sangwon put the matter aside for the time being. Coincidentally, a servant from the second gate came to report, Young mistress's brother is here. Gu Fengzi was still hating Sangwon, so when she heard that someone from the Sang family came, she said in a bad mood, Why again? Did he say something? The servant smiled and replied, He said that he was passing by and came to see young mistress. What a nice way to put it. I think he's here to take advantage of us. Our young mistress is busy. Mama, take a few silvers from the account and send him away. Lan Xiang sneered. Slap her. Young mistress's brother is not someone you can talk about. Gu Fengzi glared at Lan Xiang, and Lan Xiang quickly smiled and admitted her mistake. The old maid didn't dare to make a sound. She just pretended to be perfunctory and smiled. Ai, why aren't you leaving? Are you waiting for our young mistress to ask you to stay for tea? Lan Xiang saw that the servant was still standing there and scolded her. The servant secretly despised her, but on the surface, she respectfully smiled and said, Old slave hasn't asked for young Mistress Gu's opinion yet. Gu Fengzi glared at her and said impatiently, Don't you have ears? Didn't you hear what Lan Xiang said? Why aren't you leaving? I'm busy. How would I have the time to deal with your messy business? The servant secretly cursed her bad luck. She was afraid that Gu Fengzi would settle the score with her later, so she forced a smile and said, Then this old servant will take 10 silvers from the public account. Seeing Gu Fengzi's cold glare, she hurriedly changed her words, 5 silvers for second young Master Gu, and you won't trouble, ma'am? Go. Gu Fengzi waved her hand impatiently. The old maid turned around and left after receiving the order. Who knew that the servant would meet Hong Yi on the way and tell her about this matter? Hong Yi hurriedly returned to Ning Garden to tell Sangwon. Sangwon couldn't help but be annoyed and lightly said, If it wasn't for something, eldest brother wouldn't have come. Luya, quickly go and take a look. I'll be there soon. Luya agreed and smiled. Young mistress, you misheard. It's not eldest young Master Gu. It's second young Master Gu. What? Sangwon's expression changed and she was so shocked that she almost jumped up. She stared at Hong Yi and said urgently, Did you hear wrongly? It's second young Master Gu? Hong Yi was shocked and dazed. She hurriedly nodded, yes, Lu Mama is right. It's second young Master Gu. Quickly go. Sang Wan didn't have time to change her clothes and hurriedly ordered Luya, quickly go. Run, you must make second young Master Gu stay for me. If he's already gone, then have the servant chase after him. Quickly go. Luya had never seen Sang Wan so flustered before. In an instant, she panicked as well. Ai. She lifted her feet and ran out. Let's go quickly too. Sang Wan didn't care about Hong Yi, Xing Ji, and the others' bewildered expressions and hurriedly led them outside. It's second brother. It's second brother. She actually forgot. How could she forget? It was the same in her previous life. Second brother was on his way to Hangzhou to participate in the provincial examination. He passed by Qingzhou and stopped by to say goodbye. Who knew that he would be ridiculed by Gu Fengzi and the Shi family? He left in a fit of anger. The next day, bad news came. The boat he was on had an accident in the canal, and he himself had drowned. In this life, the tragedy couldn't be repeated. Sang Yufei had been waiting in the Shi family's gatehouse for a long time. When he finally saw the servant come out, he hurriedly went forward to ask for news of his sister. Unexpectedly, the servant, Mama Lu, glanced at him and stuffed 2 pieces of silver into his hand. She said, "Young Master Gu, take these and hurry on your way. Young mistress is not free, so she won't come to see you." Sang Yufei was stunned. My sister really said that? Sang Yufei asked indifferently. He didn't believe a single word. This servant didn't seem like a good person. Besides, he knew his sister's personality very well. What are you saying, young Master Gu? Gu Fengzi had told her that anyone who came to visit, especially the Sang family, should be reported to her first. Mama Lu happily went to report, thinking that she would be rewarded. Who knew that she would be scolded? At this time, Mama Lu had a stomach full of anger and had nowhere to vent it. She snorted coldly and said in a strange tone, "Could it be that my uncle thinks I'm lying? Our Shi family is a place with rules. This old woman doesn't have the guts." She then softly muttered, "Which guest doesn't send a visiting card first? This old woman is letting you off easy by informing you. Country people don't know the rules." Sang Yufei was, after all, a pure scholar. He still had the pride of a scholar. Hearing those words, his face burned with shame and anger as he thought to himself, "The Shi family is too much." He was too thin-skinned to make a scene with a servant. He sneered, stuffed the 2 pieces of silver into the servant's hand, and turned to leave. Mama Lu was stunned. "Qu'est-ce? She snorted and weighed the silver pieces in her hand. Satisfied, she put them into her purse. "If you don't want them, then forget it. This old woman wants them. Money won't bite you." When Luya ran over, panting, Sang Yufei had already left. "Oh, Miss Luya. What happened?" Mama Lu saw Luya panting and looking around. She couldn't help but wonder. Luya was out of breath. She grabbed her and asked, "Second young master, where's second young master? Where did second young master go?" Mama Lu secretly cursed and wanted to slap herself. Why did Tong Hongye suddenly talk so much? She changed the topic. "Second young master? What second young master?" "I don't know." Luya was no longer the same as before. Seeing Mama Lu's expression, she knew something was wrong. She pointed at her and said sternly, "Don't play dumb with me. He's young mistress's second young master. Where is he? Did he leave?" Mama Lu wasn't afraid of Luya, but she was afraid of Luya's godmother, Mama Li. She didn't dare to hide it and stammered, Left. Second young master said he was just passing by to say hello. If there's nothing else, he left." "How long has he been gone?" Sang Wan had also rushed over. She asked Mama Lu coldly with a sullen face. Mama Lu couldn't help but get angry. She thought, "Why are you all venting your anger on me today? Taking advantage of the fact that Sang-won wasn't the head of the household, she said with a cold face, "He just left a while ago." Sang-won glared at her and ordered Luya, "You go personally. I don't care what method you use. Bring people to chase second young master back. Go quickly." "Yes, young mistress." Luya rolled her eyes and hurried off. Sang-won was so angry that her face turned ugly. She flung her handkerchief and coldly ordered Hongye, "Invite Lady Wu here." Chapter 59. Servant Wu was in charge of the Shi family's rules and regulations. Nanny Lu immediately panicked, but she forced a smile and asked, "Young mistress, why are you looking for Sister Wu?" Sang-won glanced at her coldly and didn't say anything. When Xing-ji saw this, she scolded Nanny Lu, "How dare you? Does young mistress need to explain everything to you?" Nanny Lu didn't know what to say, so she smiled and said, "Then, old slave won't disturb young mistress. Old slave still has something to do, so I'll leave first." "Stop," Sang-won said coldly. "Young mistress, do you have any orders?" Nanny Lu was shocked. Sang-won ignored her and walked towards Baoxia Hall. Xing-ji shouted at Nanny Lu, "Just do as young mistress says. Don't talk so much nonsense. Hurry up and follow me." As she spoke, she caught up with Sang-won and helped her. Nanny Lu couldn't do anything. She lightly slapped her mouth and followed her nervously. When Servant Wu arrived, she greeted them politely and asked what was going on. Sang-won pouted at Xing-ji, "You tell Servant Wu what's going on." "Yes, young mistress." Jida answered and told her everything that had happened. Servant Wu's expression changed slightly and she glanced at Nanny Lu. Mrs. Wu's casual words could give Mrs. Lu a hard time. Mrs. Lu panicked at once. In a hurry, she didn't care about anything else and shouted, "I deserve to die." She hurriedly knelt down and begged for mercy. "It's not old slave's fault. It was Miss Gu who ordered me to send second uncle away with 5 taels of silver. Miss Gu said there was no need to tell young mistress." "How dare you?" Sang-won coldly cut her off and sneered, "You wicked woman, you don't even know how to lie. My family came to see me. What does it have to do with Miss Gu? Miss Gu isn't a stupid person. Why would she give such an unreliable order? Even if it's an order, it should be for you to go to Ning Garden and report to me." The old slave wasn't lying. "It's the truth." Mother Lu protested. "You still dare to be stubborn." Sang-won was furious. She pointed at her and said, "I think you've gone senile. Do you want to invite Miss Biao here and confront her face to face?" Mama Lu almost blurted out the word, "good," but she held it back. Her face instantly turned pale. She wasn't completely confused. She knew that even if Gu Fengzi came, she wouldn't admit to it. Besides, she didn't have any evidence. Even if she did, she wouldn't be able to survive in the Shi family if she offended Gu Fengzi. Not only would he be in trouble, but his whole family would also be in trouble. This servant is foolish. This servant is muddle-headed. This servant must have been possessed by a demon to do such a foolish thing and even spout nonsense. Young mistress, please be magnanimous and spare this servant. This servant doesn't dare anymore. This servant doesn't dare anymore. Mother Lu slapped her face left and right, crying and begging for mercy. Sang-won frowned and gave Xing-ji a look. Xing-ji's pretty face darkened and she scolded, "Shut up. How can you make a fuss in front of young mistress? Are there any rules in this house?" Mother Lu subconsciously shrunk her shoulders and lay on the ground, not daring to make a sound. She only looked at Sang-won with a pair of pleading eyes. Sang-won was usually good-tempered, but that didn't mean she didn't have a temper. If people came knocking on her door, she wouldn't be able to live a peaceful life in the future. Her face was still calm as she coldly glanced at Servant Wu. Servant Wu hurriedly stepped forward and replied, "It's this servant's fault for not being strict enough and letting the servants offend young mistress." Servant Wu usually had a good relationship with Mama Li, so she already knew that Sang Wan would soon be in charge of the house. Seeing that Sang Wan didn't say a word and didn't say a word of forgiveness, she knew that she wanted to make an example out of Mother Lu. Servant Wu decided to do her a favor and continued, Mother Lu was muddle-headed and offended her superiors. According to the rules, she should be punished with 20 paddles and half a year's worth of salary. She should be sent to the farmstead to do manual labor. Young mistress! Mother Lu screamed and fell to the ground. Sang Wan's expression relaxed a bit. She didn't have any intention of speaking up for Mother Lu. Instead, she asked faintly, how many people are there in their family? What are they doing in the house? Servant Wu's heart couldn't help but jump. She thought that young mistress was very fierce. She hurriedly replied, Mother Lu's family of 4. Other than the 2 of them, there is a son and a daughter. Their work in the house isn't important. We might as well let them reunite in the farmstead. Then it's settled. Let's do it according to the rules. Sang Wan nodded and left with Xing Ji. She didn't even look at Mother Lu. Yes, young mistress. Servant Wu didn't dare to breathe too loudly. She respectfully turned to the side. Farewell, young mistress. Servant Wu secretly reminded herself that she would rather offend concubine Gu than young mistress. Young mistress was the mistress of the house. This was a clean move. Miss Gu was removed from the blame and Mother Lu was punished to death. It was done beautifully. Miss Gu couldn't say anything. Even if she wanted to speak up for Mother Lu, she couldn't. Otherwise, it would be equivalent to indirectly confirming Mother Lu's words. How could she live with her face? However, if she didn't speak up for Mother Lu, everyone knew that Mother Lu was her scapegoat. Seeing Mother Lu's end, they couldn't help but feel disappointed. In the future, who would be willing to work for her? Even if they did, they would have to weigh the pros and cons first. On the contrary, young mistress not only established her power so that no one dared to look down on her, she also showed the magnanimity of a legal wife towards a concubine. Miss Gu couldn't help but accept her kindness. Seeing that Luya had finally chased her second brother back, Sang Wan finally let out a sigh of relief. She hurriedly smiled and said, Second brother, you too. Since you came to see me, why didn't you see my face before leaving? Sang Yufei was also a bit embarrassed. He didn't want to talk about the previous matter and upset his sister. He could only stammer with a smile and said, I didn't have anything important to do. I was afraid that you would be busy, so I thought about it and let it go. No matter how busy you are still my brother. Sang Wan glared at him and said with dissatisfaction, Besides, you participating in the provincial examination is such an important matter. No matter what, I should properly send you off. After saying this, she said in an unquestionable tone, Second brother, you have to stay with me for a few more days. Sang Yufei originally wanted to refuse, but seeing his sister's angry appearance, he couldn't bear to disappoint her. Moreover, he also wanted to see how his sister was doing in the Shi family, so he smiled and agreed. Sang Wan let out a sigh of relief and smiled, That's great. I haven't had a good chat with second brother in a long time. As she said this, she ordered the servants to clean up the guest room and brought Sang Yufei to see Wang. At the entrance to the main courtyard, Shi Lian just happened to come out from Wang's place. When she saw Sang Wan and Sang Yufei, she was stunned. She wanted to avoid them in time, but after a moment of hesitation, she went forward and curtsied to Sang Wan with a smile, Sister-in-law. Ever since that day by the pond, Shi Lian and Sang Wan's relationship had become much closer than before. Occasionally, she would go to Sang Wan's place to sit and chat. Whether it was intentional or not, Shi Lian had helped her that day. When she took the initiative to visit and express her goodwill, Sang Wan was happy to receive her. After a while, the two of them became much more familiar with each other. Sang Yufei had left early and stood to the side. Sang Wan held Shi Lian's hand and pulled her up. She nodded and smiled. Come and chat with mother? Is mother all right now? Shi Lian was absent-minded for a moment. She hurriedly smiled and shook her head. Mother is chatting with Nurse Jiang and the others. It's fine. Sister-in-law, quickly go in. I won't delay you any longer. I'll go talk with you later. Sang-won smiled and nodded. She watched as Shirlien left and then went in with Sang Yufei. Wang saw that Sang Yufei was handsome, polite, scholarly, and very refined. She liked him a little and treated him very politely. When she heard that he was going to Hangzhou to take the exam, Wang said enviously, "That's great. Second uncle is handsome, so his knowledge must be good as well. Once he goes, he'll definitely pass the exam. It'll be great if my San Lang can be so promising." Sang-won smiled reluctantly. Sang Yufei didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He couldn't help but think, is there an inevitable relationship between handsome people and knowledge? However, it could be seen that his sister's mother-in-law was quite interesting. At least, she wasn't the kind of person with a strange temperament. "Thank you for your kind words. If I pass the exam, I'll definitely come to visit you again." Sang Yufei cupped his hands and smiled. "Good, good." Wang nodded and smiled. "We're all relatives, so we should visit each other more often. It doesn't matter if you don't pass the exam. Second uncle is still young. Next time, if second uncle comes, let me know in advance. I'll have someone bring my San Lang back and let second uncle give him some pointers." Sang Yufei was startled. The smile on his face was a little stiff as he answered vaguely. Sang-won also felt a little uncomfortable. The exam was around the corner. Although her mother-in-law didn't mean it, it really didn't sound good. She was afraid that her mother-in-law would say something even more disgusting, so she quickly smiled and said, "I heard that third uncle is one of the top few in Yuanchong Academy. His knowledge must be very good." "Mother, you're too modest." Sang Yufei was also slightly surprised. "So third young master is in Yuanchong Academy. The headmaster there is an old Han Lin who retired from the capital. He's the most knowledgeable. Third young master will be able to pass the exam soon." There wasn't a single mother who didn't like to hear others praise their son. Wang was no exception. Hearing this, she smiled and said cheerfully, "Second uncle really knows how to talk. Hee, if that day really comes, my wife will be so happy that she won't be able to sleep." As she spoke, she smiled and sighed, "He's just 16 this year. He's still a little young. I'll let him try in the next exam. At that time, second uncle will give him some pointers." Sang Yufei quickly agreed with a smile. Sang-won was secretly amused. She didn't expect second brother to be so proficient in flattery. Her mother-in-law was so happy that she was about to turn into a flower. "Mother," Sang-won took advantage of the situation and said with a smile, "the journey back will be tiring. I want second brother to stay in the residence for a few more days." Before Sang-won could finish, Wang quickly nodded and said with a smile, Of course. It's still early anyway. Second uncle should stay for a few more days. Feel free to stay here. If you need anything, just tell your sister." Sang Yufei quickly stood up and thanked her. Wang smiled and raised her hand to dismiss the formalities. She smiled and said, "You siblings are all the same. So polite. Don't be like this. There's no need to be so polite as a family." Sang-won smiled and agreed. She brought Sang Yufei out. Chapter 60. After inviting Sang Yufei to Ning Garden, Sang-won smiled. Before she could exchange greetings, her second brother's face darkened. He questioned her, "Won Nyang, are you hiding something from us?" Sang-won was startled. She knew that the us he was referring to was him, her eldest brother, and her sister-in-law. "Second brother, why do you say that? Aren't I perfectly fine?" Sang-won smiled. Sang Yufei stared at her without making a sound. In this silent confrontation, Sang-won finally couldn't resist and slowly lowered her eyes. She forced a smile and said, "Second brother, what is second brother trying to say?" At this time, the Sang family still didn't know that Gu Fengzi was about to enter the family. Wang had always been lazy, afraid that the Sang family would make a fuss if they found out. If that happened, she wouldn't be able to handle it. She wanted to wait for Shi Fengju to return and then have Sang Wan tell them. When that time came, her son would be there to deal with it. I just feel that it's a bit strange, Sang Yufei smiled faintly. An old servant of the second gate dares to overtly obey and disregard a proper young mistress like you. Wan Yang, what is going on? Sang Wan smiled bitterly. Her second brother was different from her eldest brother. He wasn't easy to fool. She thought about how Luya had let slip in front of her eldest brother and sister-in-law during the Dragon Boat Festival. Her eldest sister-in-law had always been quick to speak and couldn't hold back her words. She guessed that she had already told her second brother everything. Sang Wan said faintly, right now, it's mother-in-law's niece, Miss Biao, who is helping her manage the household. It's inevitable that the servants would be foolish enough to look down on me. I've already dealt with that old servant harshly just now. As she said that, she told Sang Yufei the result of her actions. I've always had a good temper. I don't want those foolish people to think that I'm easy to bully. That's why today's matter happened. I believe that after today's incident, it won't happen again. Sang Yufei pondered for a moment and couldn't help but believe some of it. He smiled and said, so that's how it is. Then I'm relieved. Sang Wan smiled and said, I'm already an adult, what's there to be worried about? If I still need my two brothers and sister-in-law to worry about everything, I really... Thinking that her two brothers and sister-in-law were worried about her, Sang Wan's heart was touched, and her eyes couldn't help but moisten. Silly girl, Sang Yufei laughed and said, since your parents are no longer around, isn't it only right for your brothers and sisters-in-law to care for you and dote on you? If you don't marry well, how can we explain it to our parents in the underworld? Thinking of the happy times the three siblings had spent together when they were young, although they weren't rich, that kind of state of mind was really very comfortable and happy. Sang Wan's heart warmed, and she couldn't help but smile. Her fair and pretty face rippled with a tranquil and gentle smile, her black glass-like eyes sparkled, and her face glowed. In her previous life, how many precious things had she neglected? In this life, she must be happy, because her happiness was not only her everything, but also a part of the happiness of her beloved and blood-related relatives. Second brother, thank you, big brother and sister-in-law. I'll be fine, and won't let you worry. Sang Wan smiled and said. Sang Yufei chuckled and sighed, our Wan Yang has really grown up. She actually knows how to say, thank you. Sang Wan was a little embarrassed by his words, and was about to act coquettishly when she heard Sang Yufei sigh softly and continue, it's a pity that the older you grow, the more muddle-headed you become, and you've become estranged from your brother. Second brother. Sang Wan was stunned, and felt even more embarrassed. The siblings both laughed. Sang Yufei also faintly felt that there was something wrong with that cousin, but he was a man, and it wasn't appropriate for him to criticize an unmarried girl behind her back. He could only beat around the bush and remind Sang Wan of some things. Sang Wan smiled and dealt with them one by one, but in her heart, she began to worry. The days passed one by one, and when the time came, how would she open her mouth? Sang Yufei stayed with the Shi family for 3 days, and it just so happened that there was a large ship leaving for Hangzhou in 3 days. Sang Wan ordered the housekeeper to book a first-class cabin, and only then was she relieved to let Sang Yufei leave. Despite Sang Yufei's objections, she used her mother-in-law's name to arrange for 2 strong servants who were good at swimming to send him to Hangzhou. She secretly gave the 2 servants a death order to not leave second young master's side, and even if second young master wasn't happy, they were not to listen to him. Of course, she would also reward them handsomely. Sang Yufei really didn't understand why she was so nervous, and he only thought that she was too concerned about his exam. While he felt the pressure, he couldn't help but feel warm in his heart. The pressure turned into motivation, and it aroused his fighting spirit. He said to Sang Wan with emotion, Wan Yang, don't worry, second brother will definitely come back with the top score. I won't disappoint you. Sang Wan said, I just want second brother to come back safely. There will always be a chance to come back with the top score. Sang Yufei couldn't understand her feelings when she said this, and he only thought that she was comforting him. He nodded, smiled, and said, Don't worry. Then he turned and left. After Sang Yufei left, Sang Wan's heart was tightly clenched in mid-air, and she couldn't control her imagination. Only when she thought of the 2 servants who followed him did she feel a little better. It wasn't until 3 days later that the 2 servants came back to report that second young master had safely arrived in Hangzhou and was staying at an inn, that Sang Wan could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Gu Fengzi couldn't delay any longer, and reluctantly finished the handover. She took the carriage and left the Shi family with Lan Xiang. Before she left, she couldn't help but look back deeply at the high walls and the imposing Shi family's courtyard, and her heart felt an unprecedented sense of security. She would be back very soon. At that time, this place would truly belong to her, completely and completely. It would belong to her, Gu Fengzi. Sang Wan also tidied up her mood. While familiarizing herself with the affairs of the Shi family, she also ordered people to renovate Peony Park and make various preparations. Actually, Sang Wan didn't need to worry about these things. Mama Li had long been in high spirits and was waiting to ruthlessly show Gu Fengzi her strength. Sang Wan simply handed over the responsibility to her. Mama Li had received her words, and with Wang's explicit instructions, she took up the responsibility. The originally exquisite porcelain and jade ornaments in Peony Park were all stored in the storeroom and replaced with ordinary handicrafts. The entire set of yellow rosewood furniture was also replaced with ordinary fir wood furniture. The only thing left was the frame bed inlaid with ornaments and carved with mountain and river characters. Because Shi Fengju also wanted to sleep on this bed, it was left behind. All the curtains, door curtains, brocade canopies, tablecloths, chairs, etc., were all replaced with light pink or pine flowers. Of course, the materials were also lowered by 1 or 2 grades. Mama Li said that this was the treatment a concubine should receive. She even said that if it wasn't for Miss Gu, she wouldn't even be able to live in such a big courtyard like Peony Park. In other words, she was already exceptionally generous to her. In terms of inviting guests and setting up a banquet, Mama Li said that the Shi family had already organized a wedding this year for young mistress. At this time, it wasn't appropriate to invite guests to another banquet. Moreover, there was no one from the Gu family that needed to be invited. Since it was just a small gesture, it was enough. 3 to 5 tables were set up in the household. The masters would be at one table, and the various stewards, old and respectable nannies, as well as the head maidservants of each courtyard, would be enough to liven things up. Wang couldn't help but feel that it was a little strange, so she smiled and said, "That sounds reasonable, but it seems that Fengzi has been wronged." "Why would she be wronged?" Mama Li hurriedly smiled and said, "Which concubine isn't like this? Missy, don't forget, in the future, she's no longer your niece, but young master's concubine. Our Shi family is a family that respects the rules. If a concubine behaves like a concubine, she won't throw the Shi family's face. If others say that the Shi family favors the concubine and neglects the wife, not to mention others, old Mistress Zhuang will definitely say something." She then added, "Miss Gu has always been sensible, so she will definitely agree to this. This is for the sake of the entire Shi family's face." She absolutely couldn't tolerate old Mistress Zhuang saying that. Wang's expression changed and she said firmly, "That's right. Our Shi family is a family that respects the rules, so we can't be the subject of ridicule. Missy is right. Then, old slave Zhuang will prepare accordingly." Mama Li smiled. Old sister has worked hard. You're too kind. Missy is too kind to old slave Zhuang." The master and servant looked at each other and smiled. Shi Fengju Zhuang had sent a letter saying that he would be back in late July, but who knew that something would come up and he would only be back in early August. The auspicious time was set for early August. Wang couldn't help but feel anxious when she heard that. Thinking that it was already this time, there was no need to listen to her niece and give her son a surprise. Thus, she ordered someone to inform Shi Fengju of this matter so that he could return before the 6th of August no matter what. As for the Sang family, it couldn't be delayed any longer. Wang could only order Sang Wan to go back and inform Sang Hong and Feng. Sang Wan had no choice but to do as she was told. Sang Hong and Feng's expressions changed when they heard the news. Sang Hong was dumbstruck and couldn't believe it was true. Fong was shocked and sneered, "Sure enough, I guessed it right." Sure enough. According to Fong's idea, the Sang family should go to the Shi family and ask for a clear explanation. They should let the Shi family know that the Sang family wasn't so easily bullied. Sang Hong, on the other hand, was afraid that Sang Wan would make things difficult for them in the future. Thus, he stopped Fong. Fong angrily scolded, but when she saw that her husband and sister-in-law had no intention of making a scene, she couldn't help but feel disappointed. She sneered angrily, "That's true. You proper Sang family members aren't even worried, so why should I make a fuss? You can do whatever you want." To be bullied to this extent and still endure it, the Sang family members are really good at self-restraint. After saying that, she flung her hand and left. Sang Wan's tears immediately flowed out as she called out, "Sister-in-law." She tightly held onto Fong's arm and sobbed, "I know that sister-in-law is doing this for my own good. I only have an indescribable gratitude in my heart. But that Gu Fengzi and young master already have feelings for each other. It doesn't matter if it happens sooner or later. Sang Wan stubbornly pulled Fong to sit down and told him about the matter between Gu Fengzi and Shi Fengju. Sang Hong and Fong were stunned and became even angrier. It's all Big Brother's fault for being muddle-headed. If I had known earlier, this marriage would have been cancelled. Sang Hong was filled with regret. Chapter 61. Fong rolled her eyes at him. "You're being muddle-headed again. How can a woman force a man to break off an engagement? Moreover, with the Shi family and Shi Fengju's appearance, if the Shi family were to break off the engagement, who would dare to marry her? Unless this woman had some unspeakable flaw, why would she break off such a good marriage that could not be cultivated in 8 lifetimes? Fearing a cousin who was destined to become a concubine, no one would listen to such a reason. Which young master of a big family did not have 3 wives and 4 concubines?" Fong glared at her husband and was dissatisfied with Sang Wan. "Even so, you don't have to be so virtuous. Can't you let her in a year or 2 later? Why do you have to do it now? Aren't you making yourself lose face?" Sang Wan smiled bitterly and sighed. "Sister-in-law, no matter how muddle-headed I am, I won't be muddle-headed to this extent. Even if I have no face, I can't let the Sang family have no face." "But mother-in-law." Fong and Sang Hong looked at each other and understood Sang Wan's meaning. "She's going too far." Fong gritted her teeth. "Your mother-in-law seems to treat you well, but I didn't expect her to be such a bad person. Don't tell me she's putting on an act in front of us." Sang Wan shook her head and said softly, "Mother-in-law is a good person, but she's easily swayed. Moreover, that Gu Fengzi is not young anymore, so—" "Even so, you don't have to be so impatient." Fong sneered, "No matter what, I can't take this lying down." "Sister-in-law." Sang Wan squeezed Fong's hand and said gratefully, "I know sister-in-law is good to me. I can't wait to dig out my heart to show sister-in-law how grateful I am. But Sang Wan was anxious, hurt, and panicked. She was afraid that Fong would be angry and ignore her, so she could not help but cry. Seeing her like this, Fong Shi's heart also tightened. Her heart softened, so she gently patted her back and softly said, all right, let's not cry anymore. It's not worth crying over such a grievance. Sister-in-law shouldn't have said that. You have your own difficulties too." Since things had already come to this point, there was no point in saying anything more. "Just let her be. Wait until she enters the door, then you can take out the money of the legal wife and properly deal with her." Sang Hong could not help but interject, "I think Feng Ju is a good person, and your mother's feelings towards you are genuine. That Gu Fengzi is her niece after all. Wan Nyang, you should at least consider her feelings. If things get too tense, it won't be good for you." "What are you talking about?" Fong said hatefully, "She's already been bullied to this extent, and you still say that she's not bad. You even told Wan Nyang to endure it. In my opinion, you shouldn't be courteous to her." Sang Hong frowned. "What do you know? Wan Nyang will have to live her life in the future. Now that you've made a scene, how will she live her life in the future? He then sighed, there's no hope for Big Brother anymore. I hope that your second brother can pass the imperial examinations this time and become a grand scholar. When that time comes, not only Gu Fengzi, even the entire Shi family won't dare to do anything to you. Feng was speechless for a moment. After a while she nodded and said, that's more like it. If second brother becomes an official, let's see who dares to look down on our Sang family. Sang Wan felt an indescribable warmth in her heart. She said gratefully, Big brother, sister-in-law, thank you. I'll live my life well in the future. What I should do, I know what to do. As long as I'm in the Shi family, I won't embarrass the Sang family. Good, good, as long as you're open-minded. Sang Hong's brows relaxed slightly. Feng Shi sneered and said, what day is the date set? When the time comes, I want to attend the wedding. Don't cause trouble again. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Feng sneered, if no one goes, the Shi family will think that there's no one left in our Sang family. Sang Hong did not say anything else. The 6th of August. I'll send someone to fetch sister-in-law. Sang Wan said. Good. Then I'll be waiting. Feng clapped her hands and smiled. Sang Wan calmed down a little. She believed that the appearance of her family would at least make the Shi family give her a careful explanation. The servants in the Shi family would not look down on her. The King of Hell was easy to avoid, but the little devils were hard to deal with. No one understood this better than Sang Wan, who had lived an extra lifetime. As they were talking, the courtyard door was pushed open heavily, as if someone had walked in. Feng stood up and was about to speak when she heard a female voice carefully trying to curry favor. Big cousin, cousin-in-law, you're here. It's Sang Ro. Feng frowned. Why is she here? Sang Wan raised her handkerchief to wipe the tears from the corner of her eyes and stood up. Big sister Ro. Sang Wan smiled politely. Sang Ro was flattered and quickly went forward to hold Sang Wan's wrist with a smile. Little sister. Long time no see. Ah, it's a Ro. What's the matter? Feng rubbed her hands on her sleeves and asked with a smile. Hee, that's right. When I saw little sister Wan's carriage, I thought that I hadn't seen little sister Wan for a long time, so I came to talk to you. Sang Ro's smile was a little unnatural. Sang Wan and Feng were a little speechless. The carriage was deliberately parked in a hidden place because Sang Wan did not want second uncle's family to see it. After speaking with her brother and sister-in-law, she prepared to leave. Who knew that Sang Ro would see it? Feng smiled and said, Oh, our Ro's eyesight is getting better and better. How did you know that the carriage that came was definitely your little sister Wan's? Sang Ro quickly smiled and said, That goes without saying. Aside from little sister Wan, who else in our family can afford to sit in such a magnificent carriage and horse? Only little sister Wan has such good fortune. That's true. Feng patted her sleeves. All right, then you guys talk. I'll go make dinner. Feng gave a look and Sang Hong also went out. Sang Wan originally planned to leave, but Sang Ro saw her. She would not be able to hide it from second uncle and second aunt, so she might have to go and sit down later. Ah, cousin, sister-in-law, you guys go ahead. Sang Ro's eyes lit up and her face lit up. Sang Wan and Sang Ro struggled to exchange pleasantries. The two of them did not have much to talk about in the past, and now, they had even less to talk about. In the past, in the eyes of everyone, Sang Wan could be abandoned by the Shi family at any time. Those who were envious and jealous of her engagement all mocked and ridiculed her. Their eyes and hearts were all waiting for the day when she was really unlucky to become a joke. Sang Ro was no exception. Every time she looked at Sang Wan would feel very uncomfortable. At this time, seeing her stiff smile and the words she wanted to say to please but did not know how to express, Sang Wan had the feeling that she had to bite the bullet and deal with it. Look at little sister's dignity and style now. Teske, we don't even dare to think about it. Little sister is really lucky. Look at what big sister is saying. I'm embarrassed. Sang-won forced a smile to deal with it. Sang-ro kept repeating these few words, but not a single one of them was about how she was living in the Shi family. Was her life going well? She lamented in her heart. In this world, only big brother and sister-in-law would treat me as family. Sang-ro smiled, but her envious eyes were glued to Sang-won, unable to move away. She sighed and said, "You've finally come to the end of your suffering. With such a good place to belong, all you have left in this life is to enjoy life. Unlike me, I'm afraid that I won't be able to reach the end of my suffering. I don't ask for anything else. I just want to be scolded and beaten less, and have a stable life." As she said that, she blinked her moist eyes and raised her hand to wipe them. Sang-won could only force a smile and persuade her, "Big sister, don't say that. Second uncle and second aunt will definitely help you." "Them?" Sang-ro snorted and sneered. "I'm not afraid of you laughing at me. What kind of people do you not know? My father will never be able to get out of money his whole life. Other than money, what else is there in his eyes? That mother of mine, I'm afraid that if she doesn't help me, I'll be able to live longer. I'm afraid that one day, when my legs give up and I close my eyes, this crime will be over." As she said that, she began to sob softly. "How can that be? You are second uncle's biological daughter after all. He definitely won't leave you alone. Even if it's for the sake of the Sang family's reputation, he can't just ignore it." Sang-won's mouth was dry as she forced a smile to persuade her. Sang-ro's body stiffened, and she suddenly felt as though there was a light at the end of the tunnel. That's right, why didn't she think of that before? She believed that as long as her father was aware of this, he would more or less have some misgivings. Although he was greedy for money, he still wanted face in front of outsiders. "Perhaps," Sang-ro sniffed and mocked herself, "I just don't know if I can wait until then. Big sister is still young, what are you saying?" "Young?" These words poked at Sang-ro's sore spot, and her tone became bitter. "Have you seen a 19-year-old girl who hasn't gotten married yet?" Sang-won was stunned. Her eyes widened and she did not know what to do. "My goodness, what does this have to do with me? Why is she venting her anger on me?" "I'm sorry, little sister Won." Sang-ro realized that she had lost her composure and quickly held her hand tightly with a smile. I'm sorry. I didn't do it on purpose. Please don't blame me." Sang-won shook her head. "Why would I blame cousin sister?" "That's good. I know that you have always been magnanimous." Sang-ro smiled in relief and praised Sang-won a few more times before saying, "That's right, I wonder if the Shi family still lacks a servant. Good little sister, why don't you tell father to let me go to the Shi family as a servant? We are sisters, so I can help you." Sang-won was speechless. She looked up and saw Sang-ro's expectant face. Only then did she understand why Sang-ro was trying to get close to her. Just that, how could she be so unreliable? Sang-won thought helplessly. She was her cousin, and their fathers were biological brothers from the same mother. Going to the Shi family as a servant, only she could think of that. "How can that be? You are my big sister. How can you go to the Shi family as a servant?" Sang-won laughed. Under Sang-ro's covetous gaze, she could not help but feel a little overwhelmed. "If you don't want to be a servant, you can be a female housekeeper or something." Sang-ro's eyes sparkled. "Don't you rich families have female housekeepers?" I will definitely side with you in everything." Sang-won was even more speechless. She could only smile and say, "My mother-in-law is in charge of the household now. Furthermore, the female housekeepers in the household are all born in the Shi family and have been working in the Shi family for more than 10 years. Furthermore, even if they are female housekeepers, they are still servants. How can I trample on my own cousin like this? If this gets out, people will laugh at us." Chapter 62. I don't care, it's fine, it's really fine. Sang-ro said eagerly, "Then, why don't you just say that I'm a servant you bought and not say that we're sisters? Good sister, just treat it as doing me a favor and helping me. Is that okay? Good sister. Sangwon could not help but feel angry and secretly sneered. Not say that we're sisters? With Sang-ro's character, how could that be possible? Even if she did not say it openly, she would definitely say it secretly. And after it was exposed, she would definitely say that she did not know anything. That won't do. Sangwon's eyes turned slightly and her expression turned cold. She said faintly, "What kind of scandal would it be if this were to spread out? Wouldn't they say that I, Sangwon, am cold and heartless and cheapen my own sister? I can't bear such a reputation. Cousin, don't say it any more." Sang-ro was extremely disappointed and did not give up. She quickly smiled and said, "Yes, I didn't think it through. Sister Won, don't be angry. Then, don't the She family have so many businesses? Which place needs female workers? Can you introduce me? I promise that I'll only work hard and will not mention my relationship with you." She then begged, "Good sister, I just want to rely on my own ability to make a living." "Really? I won't embarrass you. Was there an end to it?" Sangwon became impatient and could only push it away. "I don't know much about business and I don't know if there's anything suitable for you. And, will second uncle and second aunt agree? After all, they are your father and mother." This sentence completely shattered the last bit of hope in Sang-ro's heart. That's right, as long as her father and mother were around, no matter what she wanted to do, it would be impossible to succeed. Her father only cared about money. If she led him to think in this direction, she still had hope to fool him into agreeing. But that mother, she knew that she would never be able to fool her. "Stupid girl, where the hell did you go? Why aren't you back here to cook for me? There's a lot of housework waiting for you and you still have time to talk nonsense. Wait for me to serve you. You ran away when I wasn't paying attention. Are you in heat?" Li Li's sharp and vulgar curses rang out in the courtyard, followed by the sound of angry footsteps. Was this something an elder should say? Sangwon could not help but be secretly angry. She looked at Sang-ro, only to see that she had already stood up in fear and trepidation, her face full of fear. Sangwon's anger immediately dissipated. Some people were just like that, lamenting their misfortune and angering their incompetence. Before Fong could stop her, Li had already rushed in like a gust of wind. She grabbed Sang-ro's ear and scolded her. After scolding her for a while, she realized that Sangwon was also there. She was stunned. After confirming that she was not mistaken, she pushed Sang-ro aside and said to Sang-ro with a smile, "Yo, Won-young, you're back. I'm not dreaming, right?" She rolled her eyes at Fong, who had followed her in, and sneered, "Why didn't you come to second uncle's and second aunt's place? Could it be that you've flown to a higher position and are looking down on us elders?" Sang-ro saw this and quickly went forward with a flattering smile. "I just came in to invite younger sister Won to our house." Sang-won could only smile and say, "No way. Second aunt is treating me like an outsider. I was planning to go over in a bit." Li snorted and glared at Sang-ro, not caring about her flattery. She smiled at Sang-won and said, "Hee, I knew that our Won-young is the most respectful and filial to her elders. If no one instigated her, she would have gone over long ago." Li glanced at Fong as she said this. "Oh, second aunt isn't talking about me, right?" Fong giggled and said, "Second aunt, you have to have evidence before you speak. I'm busy making lunch with Nanny Sue right now. I was thinking of calling second uncle and second aunt over for lunch after I'm done. I'm not happy with second aunt's words." Li took a deep breath and smelled the thick smell of chicken soup. She was happy and said with a smile, "Hey, when did I talk about you? No matter how bad things are between you and Dalong, you wouldn't dare to disrespect your elders. I'm talking about this wretched girl." Li turned around and poked Sang-ro's forehead. She scolded, "What are you still standing there for? Waiting for the new year? Why aren't you going back to invite your father and younger sister over for lunch? Don't come. Hurry up and eat something and go to the fields. The vegetable fields in Donglong too haven't been plowed yet. You're always eating and being lazy." Does rice just fall from the sky? Sang Ro's heart was full of resentment, but she didn't dare to contradict Li. She just raised her eyes and looked at Sang Won pleadingly. Sang Won pretended not to see it and lowered her head to drink tea. This was her brother and sister-in-law's home. It wasn't her place to make the decision to ask them to stay. Moreover, she didn't want to get involved in the family affairs of the second branch. Sang Ro was secretly disappointed that Sang Won didn't see the look in her eyes. Before Li could scold her a second time, she hurriedly turned around and ran away. I say, Won Young, why did you come back? Did you bring something for us? Li sat down with a chuckle. She wanted to ask Fong to pour a cup of tea, but when she looked up, she found that Fong had already gone back to the kitchen. She didn't dare ask Sang Won to pour tea, nor did she dare ask Luya to do so. She coughed and gave Luya a look. Luya didn't move at all. She couldn't understand what she meant. She could only get up and pour herself a bowl. She cursed in her heart. Damn girl, you're not smart at all. Hearing those words, Sang Won could no longer feel any emotion or anger. She really couldn't get angry at them. She smiled faintly and said, I had something to do in Willow Town, so I came back. Oh. What is it? Li laughed dryly and asked curiously. Sang Won looked up and smiled. I saw that the door to second aunt's courtyard was closed. I thought second uncle and second aunt weren't home. Seeing that she didn't say anything, Li knew that she shouldn't have asked and stopped the topic. She smiled and chatted with Sang Won. Not long after, second old Master Sang and Sang Yen arrived. Fong came in and said that dinner was ready, so everyone sat down to eat. Sang Won ordered Nanny Su to give 2 big chicken drumsticks to Sang Quan and Sang Nuan. Li immediately set her eyes on the 2 small chicken drumsticks. She took one for herself and another for Sang Yen. Eat quickly. The 2 of them devoured everything, and soon, there was a big pile of chicken bones in front of them. Sang Yen secretly glanced at Sang Wan, who was still eating gracefully, and then at her own parents. She secretly felt embarrassed. The rice and chicken in her mouth tasted as if she was chewing wax. Sang Wan successfully completed the task given to her by Wang and returned to report everything. When she heard that Sang Wan's sister-in-law wanted to attend the wedding banquet, Wang didn't think much of it. Instead, she was very happy and smiled, saying that her sister-in-law was too courteous. She even instructed Sang Wan to treat her well. Sang Wan agreed to all of them. Who knew that just 2 days later, the servant who followed Gu Fengzi to the house, Lon Xiang, came back wearing a plain dress with no hairpins. She cried and said, Old Master Gu has passed away. Wang and Sang Wan were stunned. Of course, the 2 of them had different feelings. Gu Jin dead? What happened? He was fine. Why did he suddenly die? Wang stammered. Lon Xiang wiped her tears and said, Old Master Gu got drunk and fell. His head hit a rock, and he died. Oh. Wang held her forehead. What should we do? What should we do? Sang Wan saw that Wang was in a daze and Lon Xiang was wiping her tears. She could only say, Mother, the dead should be respected. Let's think about how to handle the funeral. Who else is there in the Gu family? Cousin Fengzi is still young and hasn't experienced such a big event. I'm afraid she's anxious and doesn't know what to do. Yes, you're right. Wang couldn't help but say, let the housekeeper bring a few people over to help. No matter how much money is spent, just do it. How can there be anyone in the Gu family who can make decisions? They're all unreliable. Nanny Jiang, arrange for 2 more experienced women to accompany Fengzi and advise her. She then instructed Lon Xiang, all right, don't cry anymore. You're dismissed too. Follow the housekeeper back and serve your family's missy well. Understood. Yes, this servant understands. Missy said that when the funeral is over, she'll come and kowtow to old mistress. Lon Xiang kowtowed and Nanny Jiang hurriedly left to make the arrangements. What an unexpected turn of events. Wang Shi sighed. Old people were the most affected by the separation of life and death. Even if she hated Gu Jin in the past, Wang could not help but shed a few tears. Sang-won saw this and quickly persuaded her. Together with Mama Lee, the two of them accompanied her. "Missy, since things have come to this is fate. Don't think too much about it." Mama Lee saw that Wang's emotions had calmed down and persuaded her a few more times. Then she changed the topic and sighed. "Tell me, what should we do now? Miss Gu's marriage, are we still going to do it?" That's right, how could she forget about this? Wang's brows could not help but knit together. For a moment, she was in a dilemma. There was no such thing as a daughter getting married when her father had just passed away. That was not the way things were supposed to be. What's there to do? Wang sighed and said weakly, "Everyone stop. Stop preparing. We won't be treated as a joke. Moreover, it's not proper." "Yes, that old slave will arrange it later." Mama Lee sighed and said, "This Miss Gu she really has a bad life." Wang She's heart was touched. She thought of how Gu Fengzi lost her mother when she was young, and how her father passed away just before she got married. Sure enough, all sorts of unfortunate things happened to her. She nodded her head. "You're right, Fengzi's life is indeed bitter." Mama Lee said intentionally, "I hope that when she marries into the family in the future, young master's good fortune will be able to help her." Wang was startled and her face changed. The words, Jink's mother and Jink's father, subconsciously jumped into her mind. Following behind those words, the words, Jink's husband, naturally appeared. "All right, I want to be alone for a while. You all can leave first." Wang was hesitant, but she ordered without any hesitation, "Put away all the preparations from before. We'll talk about this again in the future." Although there were many misgivings in her heart, Gu Fengzi was still a niece that she had raised for many years. Wang could not make the decision to not want her. Chapter 63. "Yes, Missy." Mama Lee agreed and left. She did not say that out of selfishness to deliberately put Gu Fengzi in a bad light in front of Wang, but Mama Lee really had such concerns. What if Gu Fengzi was really so stubborn that she would jinx everything she touched? What would happen to her eldest young master then? What kind of good woman was there in this world? If the eldest young master wanted to take in a concubine, he could choose as he pleased. Who said that it had to be Gu Fengzi? Upon seeing that, Sang-won also excused herself. "Oh, and," Wang stopped them, "send a letter to Fengju as well. Tell him that we won't be doing it for the time being. Tell him not to rush back and to take his time to settle the matters at hand. Also, don't tell him about the Gu family. Even if we tell him, he won't be able to help anyway." Sang-won and Mama Lee quickly agreed. Both of them thought to themselves, "Look at how troublesome this matter is." Who would have thought that right after the letter was sent over, it would be sent over by Shi Fengju's letter? Shi Fengju did not write a letter, but a message. Chen he reported that the eldest young master had rushed to Miss Gu's house and would be back in a few days. Wang's face darkened when she heard that. After a moment of silence, she asked unhappily, "How did the eldest young master find out about the Gu family?" Chen he saw that old mistress was unhappy and could not help but straighten his back. He forced a smile and said, Miss Gu sent someone to wait for the eldest young master at Qingzhou's pier. After the eldest young master read her letter, he hurriedly hired a carriage and rushed there. He told this servant to report back to old mistress. Hearing this, Wang Shi glared at Chen He and scolded him. "He's really something, huh? He's already at the door, but he didn't even come back to see his mother. He's not coming, so what are you still doing here? Hurry up and get away from me. Get lost." Chen He was scared out of his wits and dared not complain. He kowtowed and hurriedly got up and fled. "Mother, don't be angry," Sang-won comforted with a smile. "Old Master Gu is a relative after all. Since eldest young master is here, there's no reason for him not to pay his respects. It wasn't that he didn't come back on purpose. Didn't he send Chen He back to report that he was safe? You're the eldest young master's mother. Who else would he miss if not you?" Hearing this, Wang felt a little better. She couldn't help but look at Sang Wan and sighed, "Wan Nyang, you're really good. Fortunately, you're here. Otherwise, Mother would really be angered to death by that unfilial son." "Mother, what are you saying?" Sang Wan smiled and said, "Wan Nyang has always been under Mother's care and has never done anything for Mother." Mother's words, "Wan Nyang is ashamed." Wang smiled, "Mother likes your gentle temperament. No matter how I look at it, it makes me feel comfortable." "Forget it, Mother won't be angry anymore. With such a good wife, what's there to be angry about? Alright, you can go back. I want to be alone for a while." Sang Wan smiled and said, "Then Mother, have a good rest. I have to ask someone to move eldest young master's luggage in. We'll deal with it when he comes back." "What a good wife." Wang smiled even more satisfactorily. She smiled and said, "Don't tire yourself out. Just let the servants do it." Sang Wan nodded and left with a smile. Shi Fengju's returning fleet stopped at Jinling to settle some matters. Unexpectedly, he received a letter from Wang telling him to rush back home to marry Gu Fengzi before the 6th of August. Shi Fengju couldn't help but say, "Nonsense." His first reaction was not Gu Fengzi, but Sang Wan. He didn't know what Sang Wan was thinking. He didn't know how she was doing. He had clearly promised her. He clearly had a 1-year agreement with her. But now, his mother wanted his cousin to marry into the family. How could he face Sang Wan? Shi Fengju was burning with anxiety. He immediately ordered the accompanying shopkeeper and steward to make some arrangements. Then, he brought a few servants with him and rushed back to Qingzhou. Whenever he thought of Sang Wan's current mood, he was extremely irritated. He couldn't sit or stand still. He wished he could grow wings and fly back home. Who would have thought that on the way, they would encounter an official ship passing by? They had no choice but to wait for 2 days in vain. After the official ship passed by, the civilian ships lined up one by one. The repeated delays caused his mood to become even more irritable and uneasy. When the ship docked at Qingzhou's pier, Shi Fengju's irritated heart finally calmed down. He began to think about what to say to Sang Wan and how to turn the situation around. Unexpectedly, things turned out to be so dramatic and unexpected. Shi Fengju would never have dreamed that Gu Fengzi would actually send someone to wait for him at the pier. He also didn't expect that Gu Fengzi's letter would be about such a matter. Gu Fengzi's letter detailed her grief and helplessness. As he read the letter, Shi Fengju could almost see her tear-stained, sorrowful and haggard face. He couldn't ignore her and could only order someone to return to the residence to report that he was safe. He then brought Chong Huan and a few others to hire a carriage to rush to Gu Fengzi's house. Gu Fengzi was a good-for-nothing and did not have much interaction with the clan. His fields had long been sold off and the few clan relatives of the Gu family could not gain any advantage. Although Gu Fengzi had become an orphan, the Shi family was still around. No matter how bold the Gu family was, they would not dare to touch Gu Jin's house. Therefore, they were lazy and did not have much interest in Gu Jin's funeral. If not for the Shi family's housekeeper bringing people over, they would have run away in a hubbub. Although she already knew that this bunch of relatives were unreliable, but now that she experienced it personally, Gu Fengzi still felt a chill in her heart. This was the so-called family. If not for the Shi family, she did not dare to imagine what she would have become and what kind of situation she would be in today. She was afraid that they would gang up and sell her away. Gu Fengzi shuddered. After learning from the painful experience, she was even more determined to hold on to the big tree that was the Shi family. When Shi Fengju rushed to the Gu family, everything was going well with the help of the Shi family's housekeeper. Shi Fengju secretly heaved a sigh of relief. The next day, Gu Jin's funeral was held and the clan relatives also dispersed. In the simple and crude house, only Gu Fengzi, who was dressed in white, and Shi Fengju were left, as well as the people sent by the Shi family. Head servant Lu, get someone to renovate this courtyard and house tomorrow. Buy everything that needs to be added. Also, get someone reliable to come over and live with Miss Gu. Double the monthly allowance compared to the one in the household, and the extra money can be paid from my account. Shi Fengju swept a glance at the Gu household's 4 bare walls and sighed silently. Gu Fengzi's body stiffened and she glanced at housekeeper Lu and said softly, "All of you leave first." Everyone left and Gu Fengzi called out softly, "Big cousin." Tears streamed down her face. Don't cry, don't be sad." Shi Fengju's heart tightened and he felt his scalp tingle. "How can I not be sad?" Gu Fengzi choked. "I have nothing now. Even big cousin doesn't want me anymore. What's the point of living?" "Where did that come from?" Shi Fengju was shocked and quickly said, I never said that." "But you already did." Gu Fengzi sobbed. "Otherwise, why would you order housekeeper Lu to do that?" Shi Fengju smiled bitterly. "Fengzi, what nonsense are you thinking? This courtyard is so dilapidated, how can you get used to living here? You still have to observe filial piety. Didn't you set the date for me to marry into the family on the 6th of August? Gu Fengzi raised her teary eyes and asked sadly. Shi Fengju could not react for a moment and said awkwardly, "Fengzi, uncle has just passed away. How can you marry into the family?" "You mean, you want me to mourn for 3 years?" Gu Fengzi's eyes flashed and she looked at him aggressively. Shi Fengju quickly said, 3 years will pass very quickly. Fengzi, I promise you, I will marry you into the family in 3 years. Shi Fengju's eyes lit up and his heart heaved a sigh of relief. He subconsciously thought, 3 years. After 3 years, Wan Nyang wouldn't be in the Shi family anymore, right? He should be happy. But at this moment, he did not feel happy at all. On the contrary, he felt slightly depressed. Gu Fengzi seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. She laughed sadly and asked painfully, "Big cousin, 3 years, 3 years. Do you know how old I will be after 3 years? How can I wait for 3 years? Shi Fengju felt incredulous and something in his heart broke. The cousin in front of him looked so unfamiliar that he felt as if he had never met her before. Uncle is your biological father. How can you not mourn for him? He's not. Gu Fengzi shouted emotionally, I don't have such a father. I don't. He never fulfilled his responsibilities as a father and never raised me. Why should I mourn for him? He caused my mother's death and now he wants to harm me for the rest of my life. I hate him to death. Calm down. Shi Fengju hurriedly went forward and held her shoulders. You can't say such things. No matter how wrong he was still your father. A dead person is like a lamp being extinguished. Don't say anything. If others hear you, what will they think of you? I don't care. I don't care at all. Gu Fengzi threw herself into his arms and cried bitterly. She hugged him tightly and cried, I only care about you, I only care about you. Big cousin, you can't abandon me. You can't. I didn't say I didn't want you. No. Shi Fengju murmured. He raised his arm to pat her back, but he didn't realize that he couldn't control himself. Then let me marry you. On the 6th of August. Gu Fengzi raised her head from his arms and wiped her tears. Her eyes were shining as she said, Marrying me during the 100-day mourning period is not unheard of. Shi Fengju was stunned. He didn't expect Gu Fengzi to say such a thing. If, Shi Fengju's voice was weak and hoarse, if I say that after you mourn for 3 years, I will marry you as my wife, are you willing? Are you willing to wait? Shi Fengju's heart was in his throat. He looked nervously at Gu Fengzi, waiting for her answer. Gu Fengzi noticed the change in his expression and thought that he was just trying to deceive her. She was secretly annoyed and looked at him with resentment before saying faintly, Big cousin, I've always known that you're engaged, and I also know that your wife in this lifetime will never be me. But, what does it matter? I love you in my heart. I also know that your feelings for me are true. So, I am very satisfied. Chapter 64. She still didn't believe him. After so many years, she still didn't believe him and didn't understand his temperament. Shi Fengju's heart suddenly felt empty and indescribably disappointed. He didn't give up and said, "Feng I'm serious. Let's think of a way together. I believe it's possible. After 3 years, I'll take you as my wife." How could Gu Fengzi believe Shi Fengju's words? She only thought that he was deliberately delaying and brushing her off. 3 years. She sneered inwardly. Who knew what would happen after 3 years? It would be too late by then. If she wanted to observe filial piety, she could only stay in this courtyard. She couldn't even go to the Shi family. As the saying goes, the tea cools when the person is gone. She was afraid that he wouldn't even remember who she was after 3 years. Nothing was more practical than holding him tightly in her hands and guarding him by his side. "Big cousin, I really didn't think about coveting the position of your wife, really. As long as I can be with you, even as a concubine, I'll be very satisfied. I'll definitely get along well with cousin's wife and won't make things difficult for you." Gu Fengzi said pitifully, "Big cousin, don't tell me you're worried that an orphan like me will cause trouble? I won't. If they can let me have a place to shelter me from the wind and rain, I'll be perfectly satisfied." As she spoke, tears fell down again. Shi Fengju stared blankly at her. His heart was at a loss. She was satisfied. She said that even as a concubine, she would be satisfied. However, he wasn't satisfied. He loved her and didn't want to wrong her. He wanted her to be on equal footing with him, to be the person who would grow old with him hand in hand for the rest of their lives. When they died, they would enter the ancestral hall together and enjoy the worship of their descendants. He didn't want a concubine mother with the title of half-slave. He, Shi Fengju, didn't lack slaves, and the Shi family didn't lack slaves either. "Big cousin," Shi Fengju sighed and said softly, "I don't know if you believe me or not, but I've never touched Sang Wan. I promised to divorce her in a year and have nothing to do with her. If you are willing to wait for the 3 years of mourning to be over, I can really marry you." Gu Fengzi was stunned. She stared blankly at Shi Fengju as if she had seen a ghost. Just as Shi Fengju finished speaking, he secretly regretted it. How could he say that out loud? If this matter were to spread, who knows what kind of gossip would spread? How would Sang Wan be able to face herself? Where would the Shi family's face go? What did you say?" Gu Fengzi's eyes were still fixed on her, and the stunned expression on her face did not change. She couldn't be blamed for this, but this news was too shocking for her. How was this possible? Shi Fengju coughed awkwardly and avoided her gaze. He said awkwardly, "Well, it's nothing. It's up to you to believe it or not." If Gu Fengzi truly understood Shi Fengju, she would know from his expression that he was telling the truth. However, her mind was filled with thoughts of her future. How could she have the heart to think about anything else? Seeing Shi Fengju evading her question and not willing to face it directly, Gu Fengzi immediately thought that he was guilty because he was lying to her. Gu Fengzi could not help but feel annoyed. In order to delay this matter, he even said such unreliable words. A man's heart was indeed fickle. Gu Fengzi regretted it. Why was she so reserved in the beginning? She should have done it with Sang Wan before she married into the family. "Big cousin, I'm serious. Everything I said is the truth." Gu Fengzi made a solemn vow with tears in her eyes. "I swear, I really only want to be by your side. I'm willing to be a concubine. I won't fight with cousin's sister-in-law for anything. I really won't." "Fengzi, are these your heartfelt words?" Shi Fengju's voice was as weak as his body. His heart was filled with mixed feelings. This was the woman he liked and admired for so many years. This was the woman he yearned to grow old with. Originally, she only wanted to be a concubine. He did not feel that she was great. He only felt a deep disappointment. "Yes, these are my heartfelt words. I can swear." Gu Fengzi quickly nodded. "All right." Shi Fengju glanced at her and nodded. "I understand." "Then, you agree?" Gu Fengzi's eyes lit up. And Shi Fengju nodded lightly. From this moment onwards, she was only his concubine. Nothing more. Gu Fengzi smiled happily. She held onto Shi Fengju's arm and said, "Big cousin, I knew you wouldn't ignore me and not want me." Big cousin. Shi Fengju tilted his head and looked at her. His eyes and heart were calm. The feeling of his heart pounding had completely disappeared. The next day, Shi Fengju returned to the Shi family. Gu Fengzi personally sent him off and said reluctantly, "Big cousin, don't forget your promise." Shi Fengju thought to himself, "I've never forgotten my promise. However, you've never believed it either. All right." He smiled faintly and turned to leave. The Shi family's front door was right in front of him. Shi Fengju rubbed his head and shook his head as he walked in. Wang was very dissatisfied with her son's behavior of going to Gu Fengzi's place first. Seeing him come back, her face was still full of anger. She turned her face away and refused to speak to him. Shi Fengju could only coax her for a while before she became happy again. "How is Fengzi now?" In the end, Wang sighed and asked. Although she was annoyed with her son, she was still more concerned about Gu Fengzi. Shi Fengju briefly explained the situation there. It wasn't much different from what Wang had imagined. She sighed and left it at that. "It's good that you're back. Quickly go back and see Wan Nyang. Have a good rest. You've been busy for so many days. You must be tired," Wang said. "Mother, I have something to ask you." Shi Fengju said, "You wrote me a letter saying that on the 6th of August. Pretend I didn't say anything." Wang hurriedly waved her hand. "Of course not. We'll talk about it after Fengzi's mourning period." Wang hated it when people brought up this matter. Even if it was her son who brought it up, she still felt very uncomfortable. "No," Shi Fengju said. "Let's do it as usual. On the 6th of August, we'll bring Fengzi into the family." "What?" Wang's eyes widened in shock. You said we'll bring her into the family on the 6th of August? That means Fengzi isn't young anymore. 3 years. Shi Fengju's lips curled up and said half-jokingly, "That's too long. She can't afford to wait." Wang was speechless for a moment and said, "Since you've said so, I'm sure Fengzi has the same idea." "Fine. Then let's bring her into the family before the 100-day mourning period. It's good to bring her into the family earlier. But let's make things clear first. We can only consummate after 3 years. This rule can't be broken. After all, the one who died was her father." "I know." Shi Fengju nodded. "As for Wan Nyang, you can talk to her yourself." Wang felt a little bored. She thought to herself, how did this matter end up like this? It's really making me feel uncomfortable. And Shi Fengju's heart tightened and he could only nod. As for the other matters, I'll have to ask Mother to make arrangements. As they were talking, Mama Li heard that Shi Fengju had returned and rushed over. Wang saw her and smiled. This matter is Mama Li's responsibility. You can just ask her. Shi Fengju smiled. After greeting Mama Li, he told her about the matter. Mama Li was stunned at first, then she couldn't help but curse inwardly. This woman's conscience must have been eaten by a dog. Her father just died and she can't wait to get married. She's not afraid of such a tough life, but what if she gets in the way of eldest young master? Mama Li couldn't help but feel vexed that she didn't tell Wang everything. Now that Wang had agreed and eldest young master had such an attitude, she could only swallow her words. Fortunately, they can only consummate after 3 years. Since she's marrying into the family during the mourning period and as a concubine, I don't think there's anything to be particular about. There's no need for a banquet. When the day comes, a small sedan chair can be brought in from the side door. If it's too high profile, people will gossip instead. Nanny Li said. She could not wait to take advantage of the dark and windy night to quietly bring Gu Fengzi into Peony Park. From then on, Gu Fengzi would be locked up in Peony Park and never step out. There's also Peony Park. I'm afraid it'll have to be reorganized. Many things from before are no longer suitable. After all, there are many rules and taboos for people who are mourning. The dead are the most important. We can't disrespect them and we can't be particular about them. If we anger the gods, it won't be easy to handle. Wang couldn't help but put her palms together and said, "Old sister, you're still the most considerate. I know you're the most dependable. We'll do as you say. Also, do you want to specially prepare a room for Gu Jin's memorial tablet so that Gu Fangzi can burn incense in the morning and evening?" Right. Definitely. Mama Li nodded and said, "Old slave, I'll get someone to prepare a room in Peony Park. Once Miss Gu marries into the family, it won't affect her filial piety." Mama Li's Miss Gu reminded Wang, and Wang said, "Yes. Since we haven't consummated our marriage, when Fangzi comes, we'll call her Miss Gu." Missy's words are very true. That's how it should be. Mama Li's smile deepened. The two of them, master and servant, spoke one after another. Every word was clear and logical, and Shi Fengju simply had no place to interrupt. Moreover, he didn't know what else to say. She had already given up, hadn't she? After the discussion was settled, everyone went their separate ways. Nanny Li called for the servants to go straight to Peony Park. Shi Fengju, on the other hand, went back to Ning Garden hesitantly. At this moment, Sang Wan was completely unaware of the matter. Her mood was very calm. "Eldest young master is back." Hearing the servants report, Sang Wan personally went out to welcome Shi Fengju. She smiled and welcomed him into the house while instructing the servant to prepare water and tea. Shi Fengju's heart relaxed and he couldn't help but raise his eyes to look at her. The woman in front of him had a simple hairpin and wore a light yellow embroidered orchid cloak with narrow sleeves and an ivory white dress. Her figure was slender and graceful, and her actions were elegant. Her eyes shone brightly, and her smile was shallow. There was an indescribable tranquility and naturalness about her. "And you've worked hard at home." Shi Fengju smiled and nodded. Sang Wan glanced at him and said with a smile that wasn't a smile, "Look at what eldest young master is saying. There's a saying that 1,000 days at home are good, but a day out is difficult. What's so hard about me?" On the other hand, eldest young master has worked hard, running back and forth without feeling tired. Eldest young master seems to be in good spirits. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.